So annoyed. That's why I told him. No, no, why?
Hello, we'll be sent you a message that it was expired. It was completely smelling bad.
Oh.
Asking about two people that work with one of my early mentors.
My handshake was for all the very best for your wife and all the best for the future here.
Exactly, for that I think we'll meet again.
And the bloom team.
I know that, but no.
Hi. Good to see you. Rukmini is also here. Rukmini is also
How is the Jones? You want to take it on a tea or coffee?
Hey, live.
A warm welcome to all our attendees, speakers, policymakers, farmers, and crucial seminar on transforming Indian agriculture, pathways for agroecological transition. We all know that agriculture has always been the backbone of our country. However, today's climate crisis, rising costs, and declining farmer incomes demand a shift towards sustainable practices like agroecology. So today, this seminar aims to bring together experts, policymakers, and practitioners to explore viable solutions for India's agricultural transition. We are honored to have today's speakers with us. I now invite them onto the stage and occupy their chairs. First, we are having Padma Shri Subhash Sharma Garu, an organic farmer. We welcome you, sir. Next, we have Dr. Lindsay Jaacks. She is a professor from University of Edinburgh. Welcome, ma'am. And also I request Dr. G. V. Ramanjaneyulu, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Agriculture, and Dr. Sharma Garu, Independent Policy Analyst. Welcome, you, sir. We are also yeah. So I invite Governor to KV Garu onto the stage. Okay. So we are also privileged to have our esteemed guests who are sitting in the audience as well. We have Dr. Srijit Mishra Garu, Professor, University of Hyderabad, Mr. Mallareddy Garu, Farmers Organization Representative, and Rambabu Patangi Garu, he is editor from Sakshi. And we also have Vinod Pavarala Garu, Professor from HCU, and we also have our very much associated one, Dr. Rukmini Rao, Director of Gramya Foundation. And so before we are moving ahead with our sessions, to make this seminar more engaging, we will be using Mentimeter, an online platform where you can participate and pose your questions and comments. We will be taking session notes. So to guide us through this Mentimeter, I invite my colleague Adrija to explain the process. Over to you, Adrija. So sorry for the technical glitch. To commence today's seminar, We have the privilege of felicitating a remarkable individual who is with us today, Sri Subhash Sharma. He is a organic farmer from Hyderabad, Maharashtra. His dedication to natural and sustainable farming has not only transformed his own land but also his fellow farmers. So his pioneering work in soil health, water conservation and biodiversity has earned him prestigious Padma Shri Award in the year of 2025. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Subhash Sharma ji, for accepting our invitation and joining us. One of those very rare farmers who influenced the agricultural transitions in this country, Subhash Sharma ji had a remarkable impact on the transitions happening in the country. Today we are talking about organic natural farming, but years back, decades back, he is the one who could establish in the center of where there was large number of farmer suicides. If you actually look at from Google map, you will see is the farm, only the farm which will be green even in summer. That's the kind of thing. And much is talked about Subhash Sharma's organic farming techniques and water harvesting techniques. But what I also learned from him when I went to his farm, the way he treats his labor. There's no labor, actually they are all his partners. He has houses built for them on the farm. He takes them on an annual tour. He goes with them. And remarkable way of actually dealing with people, not just about soils and plants. I think that's what has made you very special, Subhash Sharma ji. We really learned a lot. And his techniques of water harvesting, I think 15 years back when I wrote it in Hindu, there was a lot of calls from all over. Simple techniques to harvest water and to build soil health. When people say whether organic farming is possible, not possible kind of thing. And that was what he could establish. And when we started CSA, it's from farmers like Subhash Sharma we learned. There are a lot of innovations across the country. And but there is also deep crisis. So we thought how we can take these experiments done by farmers in this country from the last year. That's what CSA is. And we are very fortunate to have Subhash Sharma guiding us all along. Thank you very much. We have a farmers of India
Thank you, sir. I now request Subhash Sharma Garu to enlighten us with his experience and words.
मंच पर आसीन सभी आदरणीय और सभागृह में सम्मानित सभागृह, मुझे खुशी होती है आप लोगों से मेरे अनुभव को जब भी शेयर करता हूँ। मैं हिंदी में बात करूँगा। मैं 1970 से 1970 से एग्रीकल्चर कर रहा हूँ। इसमें मैंने दो विज्ञान देखे, एक विनाश का विज्ञान और एक निर्माण का विज्ञान। विनाश के विज्ञान में मैंने क्या क्या खोया ये समझ में आई कि मैंने मिट्टी, पानी और पर्यावरण को खो दिया है, तो मुझे मंजूर नहीं था, मैंने उसको छोड़ दिया। 94 से नेचुरल फार्मिंग स्टार्ट की, तब वो नेचर मेरा गुरु हो गया, वही मेरा वाइस चांसलर हो गया, वही मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी हो गई, और वहाँ पे मेरे बहुत सारे प्रोफेसर तैयार हो गए। वंडरफुल था। वहाँ के पेड़ पौधे, जीव जंतु, गाय बैल, वहाँ काम करने वाले जितने भी व्यक्ति है, सबके बहुत गजब के वर्क थे। उनके काम से मैंने धीरे धीरे समझना चालू किया नेचर फार्मिंग को। उनका काम नेचर फार्मिंग में अद्भुत था कि उन्होंने मुझे एग्रीकल्चर सिखाया कि व्हाट इज एग्रीकल्चर, एग्रीकल्चर क्या है। ये पहले तो मैं एग्रीकल्चर नहीं करता था, एक व्यापार व्यवस्था थी जो हम किसानों के साथ जुड़ी हुई व्यवस्था थी। लेकिन जब इन प्रोफेसरों के साथ, इन गुरुओं के साथ जब काम करना चालू किया, तो उन्होंने मुझे रियल एग्रीकल्चर सिखाया कि जिस व्यवस्था में मिट्टी बनती है वो व्यवस्था का नाम एग्रीकल्चर है। तो आज हमारी बनती नहीं आज की व्यवस्था में, जिस व्यवस्था में पानी बनता हो वो व्यवस्था का नाम एग्रीकल्चर है, जिस व्यवस्था में पर्यावरण बनता हो वो व्यवस्था का नाम एग्रीकल्चर है। एग्रीकल्चर के दोनों भी साइड देखने पड़ेंगे कि कौन सा एक व्यापार प्रोटेक्टेड एग्रीकल्चर, एक नेचर बेस्ड एग्रीकल्चर, जिसमें सारे ये हेल्प करते हैं। ये सब करते करते फिर धीरे धीरे समझ में आया, तब मैंने इसकी पूरा आकलन किया, आज के चैलेंज को समझा कि आज के चैलेंज क्या है हमारे सामने। तो एग्रीकल्चर के सामने मुझे ये समझ में आया कि 4 चैलेंज मेन रूप से हमारे सामने, हम उसको फेस कर रहे हैं किसान लोग। मैं भी किया, लेकिन मैंने उसके सोल्यूशन ढूंढ लिए। लेकिन आज का क्या है, उसके सोल्यूशन हमको कैसे बनाने होंगे। तो 4 प्रॉब्लम। क्लाइमेट चेंज सबसे पहला प्रॉब्लम। क्लाइमेट चेंज का इतना गंभीर आने वाले कुछ वर्षों में, आज के 3 वर्ष पूर्व कहा करता था कि हमें बचने के लिए सिर्फ 10 साल का समय हमारे पास है। 10 साल में अगर हमने चेंज किया तो हम बचेंगे, नहीं तो फूड सिक्योरिटी के, हेल्थ के बहुत बड़े प्रॉब्लम तैयार होंगे एग्रीकल्चर के थ्रू। यानी एग्रीकल्चर का इतना विध्वंस होने वाला है आने वाले 7 वर्षों में। अब इसका क्या आपके पास ऐसे किस आधार पर आप कह रहे हो, तो मैं मेरे आधार पर कहता हूँ, मैं नेचर फार्मिंग करता हूँ, लेकिन मुझे भी उसका इफेक्ट हो रहा है क्लाइमेट चेंज का। उसका बताता हूँ, मैं 1-2 प्रोडक्शन की बात करता हूँ। चने का प्रोडक्शन में आज के 4 साल पहले 15 से 20 क्विंटल पर एकड़ लेता था, वो घट के 12 क्विंटल पे आया सीधा। अब वो घट के 8 क्विंटल पे आ गया, इस वर्ष वो 8 क्विंटल पे आ गया। यानी प्रैक्टिस वही है, फर्टिलिटी के सारे सिस्टम वही है, लेकिन क्लाइमेट चेंज की वजह से इसको जो टेम्परेचर मिलना चाहिए था पर ईयर, उसमें लॉस हो रहा है। तो टेम्परेचर नहीं मिल रहा है, तो मेरा प्रोडक्शन लॉस हो रहा है। वैसे पुअर की स्टडी की, हम लोग 12 क्विंटल से 5 क्विंटल पे आगे। नेचुरल फार्मिंग में हम दावे से बोलते थे, बड़े गर्व से बोलते थे कि मेरा प्रोडक्शन बढ़ रहा है, मेरा प्रोडक्शन बढ़ रहा है। लेकिन क्लाइमेट चेंज जो आ रहा है उससे मेरे सारे सिस्टम को कोलैप्स कर रहा है वो। यानी नेचुरल फार्मिंग में भी इसका इफेक्ट हो रहा है। ऐसा नहीं कि पूरी तरह से सेफ है। जब हम मास में करेंगे तब इसका शायद सोल्यूशन निकले। तो क्लाइमेट चेंज हमारे लिए एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज आने वाले कल में होने वाला है। इसके कई इफेक्ट हमको किसानों को देखने को मिलेंगे। तो वो ये चैलेंज है, तो इसका सोल्यूशन भी हमें ढूंढना है किसानों को ही। इस तरह से दूसरा चैलेंज है हमारे एग्रीकल्चर में सॉइल फर्टिलिटी का। तीसरा प्रॉब्लम है पानी का, जो ग्राउंड वाटर का जो पानी है वो 80% एरिया का पानी वो डार्क जोन में चले गया है। ये हमारे लिए बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है। हम कल नदियां जोड़ने जा रहे हैं, लेकिन आपका ग्राउंड वाटर भी एकदम डार्क जोन में चलेगा। सूखी नदियों को जड़ के करेंगे क्या? यानी मुझे ये थोड़ी सी लगता है कि हम कहाँ कैसे खर्च करने चाहिए, हमारी पॉलिसी कैसी होनी चाहिए, वाटर पॉलिसी क्या होनी चाहिए। तीसरा चैलेंज का चौथा चैलेंज, जो हम पर्यावरण को पूरी तरह से असंतुलित कर दिए। तो ये 4 हमारे सामने मेन चैलेंज है। इसको अगर हम सॉल्यूशन के द्वारा, इसको अगर हम इसका सॉल्यूशन ढूंढते हैं तो हमारा एग्रीकल्चर फिर से टॉप पे चल जाएगा, क्योंकि वो एक पूरा माइक्रो क्लाइमेट बन जाएगा। इस तरह से ये 4 प्रॉब्लम आपने, तो मैंने पूरे एग्रीकल्चर को समझते समय मैंने फिर करोड़ों साल से जो नेचर का काम चल रहा था उसके जाके करोड़ों साल की स्टडी की कि नेचर में कौन से सिस्टम कैसे कैसे काम करते थे। तब मुझे समझ में आया कि ये नेचर में इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट है सभी नेट। तो उसमें ये भी एक इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट है। इसका रिलेशंस, इसका साइंस हम कैसे सब ढूंढ सकते हैं नेक्स्ट, इसको इसका साइंस क्या है, इससे हम अपनी प्रोडक्ट को कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं, नीचे को हम कैसे इसको फर्टाइल कर सकते हैं, इनसे हम अपनी को कैसे और इसको फर्टाइल कर सकते हैं, ये पूरे सिस्टम को समझा। तब मुझे इसके 3 प्रिंसिपल समझ में आए। बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट प्रिंसिपल है। पहला प्रिंसिपल परस्पर पूरकता। जब तक एग्रीकल्चर में ये साइंस डेवलप नहीं होगा, हमारा एग्रीकल्चर आगे ग्रोथ नहीं करेगा। हम कई प्रॉब्लम फेस करेंगे। उसी तरह जैसा परस्पर पूरकता है, हर एक में को पूरक व्यवस्था है, ये पूरक व्यवस्था को टिकाना, उसका नाम एग्रीकल्चर है। दूसरा संतुलन। हमारे यहाँ कितने कीट होने चाहिए, कितने पशु होने चाहिए, कितने पेड़ होने चाहिए, ये पूरा असंतुलित हो गया है। नेचर एग्रीकल्चर कोलैप्स हो रहा है। हमको फिर से एग्रीकल्चर को स्टैंड करना है, तो ये बात को संतुलन को समझना पड़ेगा। तीसरा इंपॉर्टेंट सब्जेक्ट जो है वो है स्वावलंबन का। तो परस्पर पूरकता, संतुलन और स्वावलंबन, ये हमारे लिए सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं। इसको अगर हम समझ जाते हैं और इसको समझ के साइंस को हम डेवलप करते हैं कि ये नेचर के इसमें कैसे एनपीके बनता था, कैसे माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट बनता था, इसके डीप में जाके उस साइंस की स्टडी करते हैं तो बात समझ में आती है। फिर करोड़ों साल तक ये धरती हरी भरी क्यों थी, उसमें उसका कारण वही था कि ये 3 प्रिंसिपल उसमें काम करते थे। नहीं, इस तरह से ये सब करते करते ये बात समझ में आए कि इसमें इंपॉर्टेंट जो प्रिंसिपल थे, भोजन का साइंस था। इसमें हर चीज का भोजन बनता था, यानी जीवों का भी भोजन बनता था, पेड़ों का भी भोजन बनता था, पशुओं का भी भोजन बनता था, जीव जंतुओं का भी भोजन बनता था। एक पूरी साइकिल चलती थी इसके तहत। इस तरह से एक फूड यानी एग्रीकल्चर, भोजन, ये एग्रीकल्चर का नाम है। दूसरा, पानी का अपना एक बैलेंस था। वो पानी नेचर में बनता कैसे था वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। उसके रिलेशंस कैसे थे धरती के और समुद्र के, इसके संबंध कैसे थे पानी के, और जब धरती पे आके गिरता था वो पानी को ग्राउंड वाटर में कौन कन्वर्ट करता था, ये साइंस है। ये साइंस को हमने इसको गहराई से जाके इसको समझा, देखा और उसको डेवलप किया। उसी तरह इकोलॉजी के थ्रू हमारे जमीन का, पानी का और मिट्टी का, ये तीनों ये समझ में आई। जब हमने इकोलॉजी को प्रस्तावित किया तब ये समझ में आया कि जीवों के बॉडी से ही हमको एनपीके माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट सारे अवेलेबल हो रहे हैं। उसके रिलेशन समझ में आया। इकोलॉजी की वजह से उनको आश्रय मिला और उससे एनपीके माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट हमको अवेलेबल हुए। हमने अपने खेत में स्टडी की कि मेरे यहाँ कितने जीव जंतु कैसे पैदा हो रहे हैं, कैसे बढ़ रहे हैं, तब हम आश्चर्यचकित थे। इस तरह से ये सारा एक मिनट से रिलेटेड इसके ये इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है। अब ये इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट में हमने इवोल्यूशन ऑफ नेचर के साइंस को समझा, इसके फूड के इकोलॉजी के साइंस को समझा, तब हमें लगा कि ये तो रियली एग्रीकल्चर है। तो अब एग्रीकल्चर में उसका स्पेलिंग मिस्टेक हो गया है। हम जो आज का जो ट्रेंड है एग्रीकल्चर का, वो AGRI है, तो हमने उसका नाम चेंज कर दिया कि नहीं, AGREE कल्चर चाहिए। अच्छे कल्चर के लिए मैं एग्री हूं। ये बात को हमने फिर उसको प्रस्तावित किया कि AGREE कल्चर के सिवा अब ये एग्रीकल्चर का स्पेलिंग ही चेंज कर देना पड़ेगा। मूवमेंट चला रहे हैं, जो कर रहे हैं, उनको एग्रीकल्चर का आप रखना ही नहीं चाहिए, कहीं पे भी AGREE रखना चाहिए। अब ये एग्रीकल्चर यानी जो इवोल्यूशन ऑफ नेचर है, वो इवोल्यूशन ऑफ नेचर में एक विचार है, पूरा एक इकोसिस्टम का वो उसका नाम है विचार। तो वो है विचारों का शास्त्र। हमने उसमें से फिर इकोनॉमिक्स को तैयार किया और आज की परिस्थिति में हम इकोनॉमिक्स को क्या बोलते हैं, हम इकोनॉमिक्स को बोलते हैं कि मुद्रा का व्यवहार, पैसे के व्यवहार को हमने अर्थशास्त्र से जोड़ दिया। नहीं, अर्थशास्त्र, अर्थ यानी विचार, विचारों का शास्त्र, जो विचारों का शास्त्र है उसका नाम अर्थशास्त्र है। अर्थ यानी विचार, विचार यानी अर्थ। इसको अंग्रेजी में क्या कहते हैं, इकोनॉमिक्स। मनीमिक्स कोई नहीं बोलता इसको। तो रियली एग्रीकल्चर में से जो कल प्रोडक्शन होगा, वो प्रोडक्शन होगा इकोनॉमिक्स का यानी विचारों का, और उसमें से फिर बनेगा मुद्रा शास्त्र। वो सस्टेनेबल जीडीपी होगी या जो भी होगी आपकी, उसमें से मुद्रा शास्त्र के बहुत बड़े व्यवहार बनेंगे। इस तरह से नेचुरल फार्मिंग अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी ताकत है, लेकिन वो ताकत को समझने की जरूरत है। ये इसके इफेक्ट कहाँ से होंगे, इसको हमको 3 प्रिंसिपल के साथ चलना पड़ेगा। इसका नॉलेज, इसका प्लानिंग और इसका श्रम, ये 3 के द्वारा हम इसको आगे से अच्छे से विकसित कर सकते हैं। तो अब इसके लिए हमको ये सब आज जो ट्रेंड चल रहा है, वो ट्रेंड, ये ट्रेंड में हमने मिट्टी, पानी, पर्यावरण सबको खोया है, इसको फिर से निर्माण करें। तो हमने ये जो काम किया, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अभी आपने जो अवार्ड दिया, आज का आपका अवार्ड बहुत वैल्यूएबल है मेरे लिए। तो ये सारा हमने काम किया, उसका नतीजा था कि हम इस अवार्ड तक पहुंच पाए। हमने कभी इसके लिए कोई एप्लीकेशन नहीं किया कि मुझे कोई ये चाहिए, आज तक कोई फॉर्म नहीं भरा, लेकिन कहाँ से मिला, कैसे मिला नहीं जानता मैं, सभी आप लोगों का ही देन है इसके इसमें। तो ट्रेंड चेंज के लिए हमें क्या करना होगा? नहीं तो हमको फिर अब ये पूरा सिस्टम डिजाइन करना पड़ेगा। क्यों डिजाइन करना पड़ेगा? मैंने कहा, मैंने स्टडी की नेचर की, कि करोड़ों साल से नेचर में सारा सिस्टम कैसे काम करता था। तो मुझे ये लगा कि वहां पे पशु भी काम करते थे, वहां पे पेड़ पौधे भी काम करते थे, वहां पे पूरे वनस्पतियां भी काम करती थी, जीव जंतु जीवाणु भी काम करते थे। ये सारे वेल डेवलप हो मेरे नेचुरल फार्मिंग में। तो हम लोगों ने फिर नेचुरल फार्मिंग करते वक्त अपने खेत में जो फार्म डिजाइन की, वो बहुत सक्सेस वाला काम था हमारा फार्म डिजाइन का। वो आने वाले कल के चारों प्रॉब्लम का सोल्यूशन दिखा हमको। क्लाइमेट चेंज का सोल्यूशन कहां से है? तो डिजाइन में से। सॉइल फर्टिलिटी का सोल्यूशन कहां से है? ये डिजाइन में से है। वाटर का, पानी का जो प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहे हैं, उसका सोल्यूशन कहां से? ये डिजाइन में से। इकोलॉजी का सोल्यूशन कहां से? ये डिजाइन में से। तो ये डिजाइन हमारे लिए बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट साबित हुई। हमने व्यक्तिगत तौर पर इसमें जो काम किया, उसमें बहुत बड़ा सक्सेस मिला। लेकिन फिर भी मैं कह रहा हूं कि एक व्यक्ति के प्रयास से नहीं होता, ये मास मूवमेंट बनेगी, तब इसके सॉल्यूशन इसमें से पैदा होंगे। इसीलिए इसको ज्यादा से ज्यादा हम कैसे कर सकते हैं, इसको करने के लिए अब समय जो आ गया है कि सिर्फ हमको फार्मिंग की तरफ ही नहीं, हमको समाज को भी जागरूक करने के लिए एक नया उसका आंदोलन चलाना पड़ेगा। क्योंकि होता क्या है, एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस जब निकलता है, तब हम लोग इसको बहुत सस्ते में देख के खुश हो जाते हैं। जब महंगे जाते हैं तो सरकारें बदल देते हैं। तो हमारे समाज की जो सोच है, कितना सस्ता खाए, ये एक गंदी सोच हो रखी है हमारी। यानी वो किसान को क्या लागत आ रही है, उसके लागत की भी हमें कोई चिंता नहीं। तो अब ऐसे वो होने चाहिए फोरम कि उनके द्वारा फार्मर और समाज, इसका रिलेशंस ये तैयार करने का समय आ गया है कि ये दोनों के रिलेशंस उसको समाज को बताया जाए कि किसान तुम्हारे लिए क्या कर रहा है, तुम्हारे लिए 3 प्रोडक्शन कर रहा है, नेक्स्ट तुम्हारे लिए 3 प्रोडक्शन कर रहा है, वो 3 प्रोडक्शन इसमें से होंगे। वो 3 प्रोडक्शन कौन से है? पहले तुम्हारे लिए भोजन की व्यवस्था कर रहा है किसान। कैसा भोजन? जो बिना जहर का है। तो अब सिर्फ इंसान के लिए कर रहा है क्या? नहीं, फार्मर 3 प्रोडक्शन कर रहा है। पहला भोजन का, अब उसको हम भोजन का नाम या उसको सॉइल फर्टिलिटी का नाम दें, भोजन की व्यवस्था कर रहा है। दूसरा प्रोडक्शन कर रहा है पानी का, और तीसरा प्रोडक्शन कर रहा है हवा का। तो ये जो डिजाइन बनेगी, बैठ जाओ, ये जो डिजाइन बनेगी, ये डिजाइन में 3 प्रोडक्शन बनेंगे। सॉइल का प्रोडक्शन, सॉइल के लिए अब बात करते हैं हम थोड़ा सा कि भाई सरकार केमिकल फर्टिलाइजर पे लाखों करोड़ खर्च करती है। हम इस ढंग से सारा एमपी के माइक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट तैयार कर रहे हैं, कुछ वैल्यू है क्या? नहीं। तो सरकार को भी समझना पड़ेगा, सरकार के साथ समाज को भी समझना पड़ेगा। ये 3 प्रोडक्शन का उपभोग अब सारा समाज करेगा, तो समाज का दायित्व बन जाता है। जिस चीज का उपभोग करता है वो मुफ्त में किसान से नहीं लेना चाहिए। अभी सारा मुफ्त में खाने की आदत पड़ गई है, किसान की हर चीज का सस्ते से सस्ता मुफ्त में कैसा खाऊं। तो ये बात सरकार को भी समझना चाहिए और किसान को भी समझना चाहिए। जब हम अच्छे सॉइल की फर्टिलिटी से उसका प्रोडक्शन कर रहे हैं, तो सरकार को भी इसका श्रम का सम्मान करना चाहिए कि एक किसान अपना खून पसीना बहा रहा है, बहाकर अपनी मिट्टी को फर्टाइल कर रहा है, यानी वो फर्टाइल करने के लिए वैसे फर्टिलाइजर तैयार कर रहा है बेहतर तरीके से। वैसे जीव जंतु की डेड बॉडी उसमें मिला रहा है, गोबर की खाद इस्तेमाल कर रहा है, बायोमास का इस्तेमाल कर रहा है, इससे कितना एनपीके मिलता है, तो आप उसके ऊपर करते हो। समाज को क्या समझना है कि मुझे अच्छा भोजन देने की तैयारी अब किसानों की होगी, तो मेरा भी दायित्व बनता है कि मैं सरकार पे प्रेशर डालूं कि आप मुझ पर चाहे जो टैक्स लगाए, लेकिन किसान के लिए एक फार्मर फंड हो। ये फार्मर फंड की बात जब तक नहीं होगी ना, ये मूवमेंट तेजी से आगे नहीं बढ़ेगी। तो एक फार्मर फंड किसान के लिए, किसके द्वारा? समाज के प्रेशर से, सरकार के द्वारा, ये खड़ा होना बहुत जरूरी है। इसी तरह से दूसरा, हम वाटर कंजर्वेशन का काम कर रहे हैं। तो वाटर कंजर्वेशन, अब मैं वाटर कंजर्वेशन की बात करता हूँ। 100% पानी खेत का खेत में हम रोक लेते हैं नेचुरल फार्मिंग में। कितने सिस्टम है इसके 3 सिस्टम है। इसके लिए बहुत हमने पसीना बहाया है, ये पानी के सिस्टम को तैयार करने के लिए। आने वाले कल में नेचुरल फार्मिंग में जो किसान करेंगे, तो ये पानी किसके लिए है? सिर्फ मेरे लिए नहीं, ये सारे समाज के लिए है। तो समाज इसका उपभोग करेगा तो उस पर टैक्स लगना चाहिए, और वो टैक्स से एक फार्मर फंड के रूप में प्रस्तावित होना चाहिए। वो फार्मर फंड के रूप में वो टैक्स फिर किसानों को इससे जब हेल्प मिलेगी तो उसमें एक बहुत बड़ा बदलाव आएगा। मैं आगे बात करूंगा, 2 मिनट में अपनी बात को पूरी करता हूँ। तो पानी, हम लोगों ने पानी को इतना पैदा किया कि पूरे खेत का पानी खेत में रोक दिया। जब इसको रोका तो इसका वैल्यूएशन किया कि ये पानी किसने किसने रोका, तब मुझे ये पानी की बात समझ में आई। ये पानी मैंने नेचुरल फार्मिंग की, तो नेचुरल फार्मिंग के थ्रू 70% पानी ग्राउंड वाटर में वही की जगह पे कन्वर्ट हो गया। किसने किया? तो जमीनों में इतने जीव जंतु तैयार हो गए छेद करने वाले कि हर वक्त वो छेदों में से पानी रिसा होता है। अब उसका फ्लो बंद हो गया खेत में से बहना। 70% पानी 3 साल के प्रयास के बाद ग्राउंड वाटर में कन्वर्ट होना चालू कर दिया। अब ये पानी को रोकने के लिए फिर मैंने कुछ ट्रेंचिंग सिस्टम तैयार की। वो ट्रेंचिंग सिस्टम से पानी को 30% पानी को रोका, 100% पानी को रोक लिया। ये पानी 100%, इसका मेजरमेंट क्या है? तो उसका मेजरमेंट भी तैयार किया, क्योंकि मुझे समाज को बताना है, सरकार को बताना है, तब ये बात बनेगी कि नहीं इसको प्रोडक्शन में लेना चाहिए। कि अब देखिए, सिर्फ अनाज के प्रोडक्शन से बात नहीं बनेगी। हमारी सिर्फ अनाज की नीड नहीं है, हमारी अच्छी हवा की नीड है, हमारी अच्छे पानी की नीड है। तो हमें अच्छा पानी और अच्छी हवा, ये दोनों भी चाहिए। जब ये दोनों भी चाहिए तो भाई इसका प्रोडक्शन करना पड़ेगा। ये प्रोडक्शन करेंगे तो ही हम जीवित रह पाएंगे। अगर ये नहीं हुआ, हम देखते हैं कि वायु प्रदूषण से 15 लाख लोग सालाना मर जाते हैं भारत में। तब ये वायु प्रदूषण को रोकने का जिम्मेदारी हम किसानों की, हम लेते तैयार है, लेकिन हमारी मेहनत का सम्मान करना सीखो। इस तरह से हम लोगों ने पानी को रोका। 1 हेक्टेयर में पानी को 1 करोड़ लीटर पानी को रोक दिया। कैसा? मेरे यहाँ के पानी का जो गिरता है उसका मेजरमेंट बताता हूँ थोड़े। हम लोगों के यहाँ 100 सेंटीमीटर बारिश होती है, 1 सेंटीमीटर बारिश 1 हेक्टेयर पे गिरती है, तो उसका मेजरमेंट होता है 1 लाख लीटर। 100 सेंटीमीटर होती है 100 लाख लीटर। 100 लाख लीटर पानी को हमने जगह पर रोक लिया। 1 हेक्टेयर में 100 लाख 6 हेक्टेयर का डेटा बना है, 6 करोड़ लीटर पानी को रोक दिया हमने। अब वो उसमें कुछ बाष्पीभवन होगा, वो प्लस माइनस बाद में करेंगे उसका हिसाब, लेकिन 6 करोड़ पानी हमने रोक दिया। अब सरकार एक बड़ा डैम बनाती है। वो डैम बनाने के लिए प्रारंभिक बजट होता है 300 करोड़, फिर 1000 करोड़ पे चल जाता है 1 टीएमसी पानी का। अब 1 टीएमसी पानी 2850 करोड़ लीटर का 1 टीएमसी पानी होता है। वो 1 टीएमसी पानी बनाने के लिए 1000 करोड़ का बजट चल जाता है। और हम लोगों ने इसका डेटा जब बनाया, मैंने जो पानी को रोक दिया 1 करोड़ लीटर पानी को, 2850 करोड़ लीटर पानी को, या 1 करोड़ के मेजरमेंट के हिसाब से पर हेक्टेयर मैंने खर्चा किया 15,000 रुपए में। मैंने 1 करोड़ लीटर पानी को ग्राउंड वाटर में कन्वर्ट कर दिया, यानी 15,000 रुपए मेरा खर्चा आया। मेरी 3% जमीन गई उसमें, उसका मेजरमेंट में। अब ये पानी जब उसका मैंने आकलन किया कि ये 15,000 के हिसाब से मुझे कितने हेक्टेयर जमीन पे ये पानी रोकना पड़ेगा, तब मुझे लगा कि 2850 हेक्टेयर जमीन पे ये पानी रोकूंगा तो 1 टीएमसी पानी रुक जाएगा वहां पे। 1 टीएमसी पानी 2850 हेक्टेयर को 15 से गुना किया तो 4 रुपए हुआ उसका वैल्यूएशन, यानी उसकी कॉस्ट आई, उसकी कॉस्ट 4 करोड़ हुई। एक तरफ सरकार 1000 करोड़ रुपए खर्चा कर रही है और मैं ये पानी बना रहा हूँ, इसकी कॉस्ट 4 करोड़ रुपए। सोचिए कितना बड़ा डिफरेंस है। तो क्यों नहीं प्रोडक्शन में लेना चाहिए? भाई आप वर्ल्ड बैंक से क्या लेते हो, कहां से पैसा लाते हो, भगवान जाने, लेकिन इसको प्रोडक्शन में लेना पड़ेगा आपको। इस तरह से इसका वैल्यूएशन ये हो रहा है। अब पानी का दूसरा पहलू ये देखा जाए कि प्रोडक्शन की हम बात करते हैं, हमने इसकी भी स्टडी की, प्रोडक्शन की बात करते हैं तो हम अपनी पीठ थपथपाते हैं कि आज हम 300 मिलियन टन के पार चले गए प्रोडक्शन के मामले में। लेकिन नहीं, ये पीठ थपथपाना कायदा है कि हमने इसमें ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी आई, केमिकल लाया, पेस्टिसाइड लाया, फिर नई नई टेक्नोलॉजियों पे जा रहा है। तो ये टेक्नोलॉजी में पानी का ये देश का प्रोडक्शन नहीं बढ़ा है। 2007 से 11 का हम डेटा भी रख रहे थे साथ में। 2007 से 11 का जो डेटा बताता है तो हम 212 मिलियन टन के आगे गए ही नहीं। तो भाई 4 साल आपकी टेक्नोलॉजी सो गई थी क्या? 4 साल आपके टेक्नोलॉजी से क्यों नहीं प्रोडक्शन बढ़ा? आपकी टेक्नोलॉजी सो गई 4 साल। लेकिन 2011 के बाद फिर से छलांग लगाई। क्यों लगाई? हमारे यहाँ फिर से पानी पैदा हो गया। कहाँ से पैदा हुआ? गुजरात के नर्मदा सरोवर का पानी, सरदार सरोवर का पानी लाखों हेक्टेयर जमीन सिंचन में आ गई। हमारे एमपी में डैम बने, लाखों हेक्टेयर जमीन सिंचन में आई। छत्तीसगढ़ में 3 स्टेट की एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ सबसे आगे चली गई। तो ये जहां जहां जब तक पानी बना तब तक एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ आगे गई। लेकिन ये हमेशा हुआ क्या? सक्सेस नहीं। अभी मैं पंजाब में गया, ये सब ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन हुआ। ये ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन के तहत इतना पेस्टिसाइड, इतना ये हुआ, सब उसका हुआ। लेकिन मैंने वहां पे पेड़ों का डेटा देखा कि जो पानी आता कैसे, जाता कैसे, उसके सारे रेगुलेशन टूट गए। तो वहां पे 33% पेड़ चाहिए तो 2.5% पेड़ है अभी पंजाब में। पेड़ का पॉपुलेशन जो होना चाहिए उसके क्षेत्रफल के हिसाब से। चंडीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी में बात भी कही मैंने कि 2.5% पेड़ बचे हैं आपके। पानी के रिलेशन कैसे होंगे आपके? आपके स्वास्थ्य के रिलेशन कैसे होंगे? तो बहुत गंभीर इलाज होंगे। हम बोलते हैं कि ये पानी, जो पानी, इससे न्यू रेवोल्यूशन हम आएंगे। हम बोलते हैं आपको गारंटी रेवोल्यूशन ला सकते हैं पानी के थ्रू, फर्टाइल मिट्टी के थ्रू, पानी के थ्रू, ये लेवल। क्योंकि ये ग्राउंड वाटर को हम जगह जगह पूरे देश भर में अगर उसको रिचार्ज करके इस तरह से पानी को रोकने लगेंगे तो पूरे देश का ग्राउंड वाटर रिचार्ज हो जाएगा और ये पानी से नया रेवोल्यूशन आएगा। इस तरह से फर्टिलिटी का पूरा उसका नॉलेज, उसका साइंस हम अच्छे से समझ के अगर इसको फैलाते हैं तो हम इसमें काफी हेल्प होती है हमें। तो उसको हमने अपनी स्ट्रेंथ को इन 6 सिस्टम से अपनी स्ट्रेंथ को बनाया कि ये 6 ताकतें हमारी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। तो पहला सॉइल का जो है तो उसको सिर्फ 4 प्रिंसिपल से हमने आगे बढ़ाया। नेक्स्ट तो हमने ये 4 सिस्टम नेचर से लिए। इवोल्यूशन ऑफ नेचर में ये 4 सिस्टम थे। ये 4 सिस्टम की वजह से करोड़ों साल तक हमारी धरती हरी भरी थी। ये 4 सिस्टम को हमने वेल डेवलप किया। ये गौपालन किया, ट्रीज, बर्ड, बायोमास, इसके थ्रू सॉइल फर्टिलिटी को बढ़ाया। इसके अलग अलग फर्टिलाइजर करने के तरीके, इसको इस्तेमाल करने के तरीके, ये तरीकों को अपनाकर हमने आगे बढ़ाया। नेक्स्ट ये गौपालन का मुद्दा, गौपालन के अलग अलग फर्टिलाइजर, अभी उसके मुद्दे तो सब नहीं बताऊंगा मैं, लेकिन इसके कई हमने फर्टिलाइजर बनाए। उसके वंडरफुल नतीजे ये मिले कि कई तरह के जीव जंतु, जीवाणु तैयार होकर वो सॉइल को हमारे यहाँ वेल फर्टाइल कर रहा है। नेक्स्ट ये सब फर्टिलाइजर बनाने के तरीके हैं। फिर ये जब किया हमने तो उसका बीजोपचार का, एक बीज को अगर हम उपचारित करते हैं अपने नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज से तो उससे भी पैदावार बढ़ती है। इस बात समझ में आई। और बीजोपचार का बहुत, बीज को उपचारित करके लगाने का तरीका बनाने से भी हमारी प्रोडक्शन में काफी वृद्धि हुई। नेक्स्ट इसमें फिर स्प्रेइंग सिस्टम, हमको मारना नहीं है किसी को, सबको जीना है, सबको जिलाना है संतुलन में। तो हमने इसके बहुत सरल उपाय स्प्रेइंग के किए जो पूरी लॉजिकल है और उसके काफी अच्छे नतीजे मिले। लेकिन आज परिस्थिति हुई हमारे इतना संतुलन और परस्पर पूरकता बन गई कि जैसे करोड़ों साल तक किसी ने स्प्रे नहीं किया वैसे हमने भी स्प्रे के पंप फेंक दिए। अब हमको स्प्रे करने की जरूरत नहीं, वो पूरा इकोलॉजिकल फॉर्म बन गया। ये इसका भी अहम रोल समझ के वो डिजाइन में हमने 2% में सॉइल फर्टिलिटी के लिए पशुपालन किया। वैसे 30% में एक इकोलॉजिकल बैलेंस, क्लाइमेट चेंज का सोल्यूशन और हमारे यहाँ पे एक माइक्रो क्लाइमेट बन के जीवों को आधार मिले जीने का कि वो क्लाइमेट में जीने का। तो हमने खेत को 30% से पेड़ों से जोड़ दिया। अब की हर एग्रीकल्चर लैंड को 30% से हमको जोड़ना पड़ेगा। पंजाब में तो 2.5% ही बचा है, तो पंजाब की जमीनों को भी तो इसमें किससे जोड़ा हमने? इसमें बायोडायवर्सिटी की, इसमें नीम भी है, पीपल भी है, लेकिन इनके एक एक दो दो पेड़ लगाए, लेकिन मेजर में हॉर्टिकल्चर के पेड़ लगाए जो, लेकिन उनको कटिंग करके छोटे वाले नहीं रखे, वो जितना बढ़ना चाहे बढ़ने दो। हमको ज्यादा से ज्यादा उसके पत्ते चाहिए थे कि वातावरण के कार्बन को भी झेल सके वो और ऑक्सीजन भी सप्लाई कर सके। और फिर हमने इसके माइक्रो रिलेशंस को समझने की कोशिश की। हर साइंस का एक पूरा लैब हुआ तो हमारे पास नहीं है, लेकिन एक इच्छा शक्ति, एक कल्पना शक्ति के आधार पर हमने तय किया कि मेरे यहाँ 4 महीने बारिश का पानी मिलता है, 8 महीने पानी कहाँ से आएगा? तो ये 8 महीने मुझे ये लगता है, ये तो रिसर्च का सब्जेक्ट होगा, लेकिन मुझे क्या लगता है कि 8 महीने मेरे यहाँ का जो पेड़ है वो सीधा उसका समुद्र से रिलेशन है। वो रिलेशन कैसे माइक्रो रिलेशन है, कैसे समुद्र के बाष्प का पानी मेरे खेत में आता है और मेरे खेत का पानी ग्राउंड वाटर में कन्वर्ट होता है। इस आधार पर कहता हूँ मैंने पेड़ लगाया मेरे यहाँ का कुआ मई महीने में, जब मैंने बिगिनिंग किया 2011 में एक फॉर्म में, वहां पे आधा घंटा वो कुआ का पानी चलता था मई महीने में। अभी 8 घंटे चलता है, तो ये 8 घंटे कहाँ से आया पानी? ये 8 घंटे मैंने सिर्फ बारिश का पानी रोका है, लेकिन ये कंटिन्यू। तो इसके कई इसके वैज्ञानिक पहलू है, ये हमारी इच्छा शक्ति के आधार पर हम कह रहे हैं। अब इसको साइंटिफिक जानने का भी समय आ गया है। नहीं, अब ये इसके बर्ड अट्रैक्शन इतना बड़ा कि 40% कीट नियंत्रण का काम हमें पंप मारने की इसीलिए जरूरत नहीं कि इनका पॉपुलेशन इतना बढ़ गया कि 40% अपने आप कीट नियंत्रण का काम हो रहा है इनके थ्रू। नहीं, बायोमास सबसे वंडरफुल रिजल्ट मिले हमको ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन बढ़ाने में, हमारे सॉइल को फर्टिलिटी करने में। तो ये 4 हमने घास का उपयोग किया, क्रॉप का बायोमास का उपयोग किया, ग्रीन मैन्योर कंपलसरी कर दिया हमने कि ग्रीन मैन्योर मेरे खेत में कंपलसरी एक टाइम वर्ष में एक बार होना ही चाहिए। तो वो ग्रीन मैन्योर हमने क्रॉप बढ़ाने की इच्छा जागृत नहीं की, लेकिन ये ग्रीन मैन्योर लेने लगे ना तो इसके भी वंडरफुल उसके रिजल्ट मिले। ये सारे की वजह से सारे जीव जंतुओं की डेड बॉडियों का परसेंटेज बढ़ गया, तो उसके हिस्से मिलने लगे, उसमें से माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स अवेलेबल होने लगे। नेक्स्ट, इस तरह से इतना बड़ा बायोमास जमीन में गिरेगा तो उसकी जमीन की फर्टिलिटी कितनी बढ़ेगी ये समझ में आता है। नहीं, ये पानी को हमने 3 तरीके से रोको, मैंने अभी आपको एग्जांपल दे दिए। नहीं, देखिए ये तरीके हमारे पानी रोकने के। नहीं, ये सबसे वंडरफुल रिजल्ट मिले। हमने ट्रेंचेस बनाए और ट्रेंचेस को लॉक किया। आप सूखी ट्रेंच देखें, ये नीचे की, ये भुवनेश्वर में मैंने वहां पे एक निश्वास करके सोचा है, वहां पे डिजाइन बना के दिया, वंडरफुल काम कर रहा है। ऐसे मैंने 62 डिजाइन बना दी अभी पूरे चारों तरफ, और 62 की 62 सक्सेसफुली काम कर रही है और वंडरफुल रिजल्ट मिल रहे हैं सारे इकोलॉजी के, पानी के, सॉइल फर्टिलिटी के। इस तरह से हम लोगों का ये पूरे गणित है इसके। नेक्स्ट, बीज, हमारे अपने बीज हम बनाने के तरीके कि जब हम नेचुरल फार्मिंग करते हैं तो उसको सपोर्ट करने वाले कई चीज जो क्रॉस पॉलिनेशन का काम करते हैं, और ये सारे मिलकर बढ़िया बीज बना के देते हैं। नेक्स्ट, क्रॉप रोटेशन को समझा कि भाई मैं अब मोनोक्रॉपिंग की तरफ तो जाना ही नहीं है, मुझे क्रॉप की बायोडायवर्सिटी चाहिए। वो उसमें भी हमको काफी अच्छे इसके नतीजे मिले, और फिर उसमें हमने क्रॉप रोटेशन के सिस्टम को अपनाया। नेक्स्ट, इसके बाद में और नेक्स्ट फिर क्रॉप प्लानिंग की कि क्रॉप प्लानिंग टाइम के हिसाब से कि मेरा कौन से क्रॉप कौन से महीने में, ये बहुत बड़ा सक्सेस था हमारे लिए कि इसके साइंस को हमने समझा कि भाई बैंगन को बारिश में कभी नहीं लगाना है, फूलगोभी को बारिश में कभी नहीं लगाना है, इसको ठंड में ही लगाना है, तो हमें अच्छी पैदावार मिलेगी बिना कोई स्प्रे किए। जब अतिरिक्त अगर उपज हो जाएगी तो उसको फिर हम सूखे के रूप में इस्तेमाल करते हैं। तो पूरा जनवरी से लेकर दिसंबर तक इसकी पूरी एक क्रॉप उसका डेटा बना दिया। नेक्स्ट, 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 पूरा एक क्रॉप रोटेशन का एक सिस्टम बनाया जिससे हमको लाखों रुपए की इनकम होती है। लेकिन मैंने कहा कि अब प्रोडक्शन लॉस हो रहा है 4 साल से, तो हमारा दोष नेचुरल फार्मिंग का दोष नहीं है, क्लाइमेट चेंज की वजह से इफेक्ट होके हमारे प्रोडक्शन को कमी आ रही है, लेकिन खर्चे तो उतने ही हैं जो बढ़ रहे हैं वो। तो ये भी एक चिंता का विषय अभी नेचुरल फार्मिंग के सामने हम फेस कर रहे हैं। तो दावे से नहीं बोलता मैं कि हमारा बहुत वो बढ़ेगा। ठीक, नेक्स्ट देखिए, ये सब पहले के है, पूरे 8 साल 7 साल 8 साल पहले का है पूरा उसका क्रॉप का कंडीशन का, लेकिन अब जो क्लाइमेट चेंज को फेस कर रहे हैं हम लोग, तो उसका इफेक्ट हो रहा है। नेक्स्ट, लेबर रिलेशंस, इसमें हमने आदमियों के साथ ये 4 प्रिंसिपल रखे। वैसे ही हम लोगों को ये बाद में पता चला कि हमारे खेत में सिर्फ इंसानी लेबर नहीं है, तो हमारे खेत में काम करने वाले पशु पक्षी जीव जंतु पेड़ पौधे ये सारे हमारे यहाँ के लेबर है, और ये इनका काम 12 महीने चलता है। इसके लेबर के साइंस को हमने समझ लिया तो नेचुरल फार्मिंग को समझ लिया, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाने की दिशा में अपना एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कदम हम उठा सकेंगे इसमें। नेक्स्ट, ये सारा एक पूरा समूह है जिसमें सारे आ गए, ये सब लेबर है। ये लेबर क्या काम कैसे करता है, इसका साइंस जिस दिन हमको समझ में आ जाएगा, पूरा पिक्चर क्लियर हो जाएगा। नेक्स्ट, मार्केटिंग, फिर इतना करने के बाद भी मेरी खेती जैसे मुनाफे में होना चाहिए, कर नहीं रह गई थी, तो मुझे इसका अफसोस होता था। अब मुझे मार्केटिंग को भी समझना पड़ेगा। तो मार्केटिंग के 4 प्रिंसिपल हमने पहले उसको समझे कि क्वालिटी नो कॉम्प्रोमाइज, क्वांटिटी के बिना मार्केटिंग नहीं कर सकूंगा, वेराइटी के बिना मार्केटिंग नहीं कर सकूंगा, लेकिन ये सब करके भी मुझे कनेक्शन जोड़ना पड़ेगा। तो कनेक्शन का एक साइंस करा दिया कि कनेक्शन कैसा जोड़ा जा सकता है, और अभी हम मार्केट में काफी अच्छे ढंग से सक्सेसफुली 100% हमारा अपने शर्तों पे माल बेचते हैं, इसीलिए हम फायदे में चलते हैं खेती में बहुत। थैंक यू, धन्यवाद। मुझे ये सब बातें आपसे शेयर करनी थी। ये सब हम लोगों ने बहुत मेहनत से नेचर फार्मिंग में किया, तब हमें लगता है कि अगर कहीं सॉल्यूशन है 4 प्रॉब्लम का, तो नेचुरल फार्मिंग के थ्रू हम इसका सॉल्यूशन निकाल सकते हैं। धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, sir. We all agree with you, the agriculture part especially. I like that idea. And I appreciate that he can speak for maybe 3 to 4 hours. I feel that it is very hard for him to make it for 20 minutes and with all the experience covering. Give him a big round of applause. So, all of you get ready with your questions for him, and originally
Hello. Hi everyone. I'm sorry I'll be speaking from here as I also need to operate my system. So we're using this app called Mentimeter, and as CESA has explained to you, it's kind of to get your questions and your feedback in a very quick way so that everyone can also pitch in. So I'm just going to test it. It's a very simple process. On your handouts which you've been given, there's a QR code. You can also see the QR code here. But if it's possible, then you can do it from your handout. Just scan it, or else if that's also not possible for you, you can go to menti.com and input the code that's given in your handout. So if everyone can just scan and go to the website, we can start. So we can just start with a very simple question, which is just if everyone can just put in your name. Has everyone been able to access it? Anyone with any issues, please reach out to our staff members. We'll be able to guide you on the process. Okay, thank you. We're getting quite a few names in. So we'll quickly move to the next question. So this is just as an icebreaker to understand where you all are coming from. What is the one word that you associate with agroecology? Please keep your answers to one word or a phrase at most. That's very interesting because a lot of the things that Subhash mentioned are actually coming up here: marketing, natural farming, sustainability. And finally, to the important question, if you have any comments or questions for Subhash, please questions here and we'll ask them to him. We don't have a lot of time for this, so I encourage you to put your questions in quickly. Thanks. If you are not able to get network, I encourage you to borrow your neighbor's hotspot because there's no Wi-Fi here.
There's a question, we can also pass on the mic. Yeah.
We can also pass on the mic.
Yes, some questions on the screen. See the question. You can't see? We've got the first question.
सर एक सवाल है सर, आप थोड़ा लॉक जो टू ट्रेंचेस से बता रहे थे इसके बारे में थोड़ा विस्तार से बताएंगे? जो आप लॉक टू ट्रेंचेस के बारे में जो बता रहे थे, उसकी जो लॉकिंग अरेंजमेंट जो बता रहे थे उसके बारे में थोड़ा विस्तार से बताएंगे?
उसको हम लोग क्या करते हैं, जैसे जमीन का ढाल होता है तो जमीन के स्लोप के दिशा में नीचे 4 फीट चौड़ी और 4 फीट गहरी ड्रेनेज बनाते हैं। उसको 80 फीट तक खोदते हैं और फिर 5 फीट का लॉकिंग छोड़ देते हैं। यानी खोदना नहीं है, खोदना कितना है कि उसको पिचिंग करना है अपने को पत्थर से ऐसा, तो 1 से 1.5 फीट तक खोदना है उसको, उसमें पत्थर से पिचिंग कर देना है ताकि वो बह के न जाए। फिर बाद में 80 फीट खोदना है, लेकिन ये 80 फीट ये पैमाना है। जमीन का स्लोप अगर आपका कम है तो 80 फीट रखिए, स्लोप थोड़ा ज्यादा है तो 60 फीट रखिए, बहुत ज्यादा स्लोप है तो 40 फीट रखिए। तो स्लोपिंग के हिसाब से इसका पूरा वो मेजरमेंट होता है उसका, लेकिन 4 फीट डीप ये तो।
So we take 2 questions and then in interest of time I think
हाँ, मुझे आप हिंदी में सिर्फ बता दीजिए।
छोटे फार्मर्स हैं 2-2 एकड़ वाले जो रहते होंगे इतने सारे, उनमें आपने प्रयास किए हैं क्या कि उनकी एक कोई टीम बन जाए और 50-100 एकड़ उनकी टीम बन के यही सब कर सके जो आप कर रहे हैं? ऐसा कोई इनिशिएटिव हुआ है क्या? और उसमें मैं सहयोग भी करना चाहूँगा, इसलिए आपसे पूछा।
नहीं, 2 एकड़ का किसान सक्सेसफुली काम कर सकता है, इसके तो हमने डिजाइन बना दिए। अब इसका विस्तारीकरण कैसे हो ये सब्जेक्ट हमारा नहीं रहने की वजह से हम उसमें नहीं गए, लेकिन 2 एकड़ का डिजाइन हमने सक्सेसफुली बनाया कि इसमें बहुत अच्छी मार्जिन मिल सकती है।
ओके, आपसे एसोसिएट होंगे और कोशिश करेंगे कि इसको आगे करते हैं। थैंक यू।
सुभाष और एक क्वेश्चन लेंगे और बाकी के स्पीकर्स के बाद, क्योंकि इतने सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं और ऑनलाइन भी बहुत सारे लोग क्वेश्चंस भेज रहे हैं, डिस्कशन सेक्शन में फिर से डिस्कस करेंगे।
सुभाष जी नमस्कार, मैं सुजीत चक्रवर्ती पूना से। आपने एक इन्फॉर्मेशन बहुत अच्छा बताया कि पर हेक्टेयर जब पानी बरसता है तो कितना पानी पर हेक्टेयर एरिया में देता है, वो बिल्कुल परफेक्ट कैलकुलेशन है। 10 सेंटीमीटर मतलब 10 मिलीलीटर, बस 10 लीटर पर स्क्वायर मीटर होता है। ऑर्गेनिक मैटर सॉइल के साथ वाटर एब्जॉर्प्शन का क्या रिलेशनशिप है आपके अनुभव के हिसाब से? ऑर्गेनिक मैटर बढ़ने से एब्जॉर्प्शन बढ़ता है सॉइल में, तो उसका एक थोड़ा सा
ऑर्गेनिक मैटर जब बढ़ता है ना तो हमारे यहाँ उनको खाने वाले जीव तैयार होते हैं। वो खाने वाले जीव जमीनों में छेद करते हैं तो छेदों की वजह से पानी के रिसाव की तेजी बढ़ जाती है उसमें। तो वो सिर्फ ऑर्गेनिक वो नहीं है हमारे लिए उसमें के जीव जंतु ये इम्पोर्टेंट है। कि वो कितने तेजी से बढ़ रहे हैं हमारे गली में।
सोनू जी, मेरा सवाल ये था कि ऑर्गेनिक मैटर का जो अभी एक समस्या ये है कि सॉइल में ऑर्गेनिक मैटर बहुत कम होता चला गया है। एवरेज अगर देखा जाए तो 0.5% से कम ही है
जी।
तो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर कितना बढ़ने से सॉइल में एब्जॉर्बिलिटी, वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी बढ़, आपका अनुभव क्या है?
हाँ, वो अच्छा सवाल है। हम लोगों ने अपने विशेष प्रयास से गोबर खाद का भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं, लेकिन हर एक के पास तो इतना गोबर खाद नहीं है करने लगेगा, तो उसका ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन बढ़ाने के लिए हम लोगों ने बायोमास के रूप में पूरे क्रॉप के जितने भी इसके जो उसका इस्तेमाल करने का एक तरीका बना के रखा है कि हम 1 ग्राम भी उसका वेस्ट नहीं जाने देते। लेकिन ग्रीन मैन्योर पर ईयर 3 साल में एक बार कम से कम वो सॉइल में आना चाहिए। तो ग्रीन मैन्योर का भी एक हमने बहुत वजन मिलना चाहिए, तो उसका एक बीज बनाए, तो उसमें 8 किलो बाजरा लेते हैं हम लोग। बाजरा बहुत बारीक होता है, जल्दी वो जमीन में सड़ भी जाता है। इस तरह से 8 किलो बाजरा, 6 किलो बरबटी और 10 किलो बोरा ढेंचा, ये सबको एकत्रित करके जमीन में 3 साल में एक बार हम बोते हैं। कहीं कहीं तो हम विशेष हमें सेकंड क्रॉप लेना है, लेकिन उसका टाइमिंग परफेक्ट होता है कि अगस्त में बो देने से इसको बहुत अच्छा मार्केटिंग मिलता है, बहुत अच्छे रेट मिलते हैं, तो हम जून से अगस्त तक उसका ग्रीन मैन्योर का क्रॉप डबल भी होगा रिपीट तो करते हैं। तो इतना जब उसमें बायोमास मिलने लगने की वजह से, वो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर मिलने लगने से उसका ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन बढ़ जाता है।
धन्यवाद।
Thank you everyone. I hope you will continue same enthusiasm till the end of the session. She is a global expert in health, nutrition, and food systems. She holds the personal chair of global health and nutrition at the University of Edinburgh and has previously been an assistant professor at Harvard University. And her research explores the intersection of agriculture, nutrition, and health, with a strong focus on the effects of pesticides and health benefits of sustainable farming. So she will be presenting on the why food systems transformation is critical in the wake of food safety and nutrition crisis. So we welcome you, ma'am, and take over.
I feel like that will. Oh, actually, it's not actually buzzing. Sometimes if you have 2 mics on it, it makes funny noises. It's really an honor to be here, and I don't think I'm quite worthy of the honor of sitting on this panel with the esteemed speakers who are here tonight, but it really, it's great to be here. And I know very little about agriculture. I've learned much of what I know from Dr. Ramu over the years, and my background is in nutrition. So what I'm really interested in is trying to understand how our food production systems and what we grow influences health and nutrition outcomes in people. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first slide. And I am a lecturer at the rely on my slides, apologies for that. So I, as a person who is working in nutrition and public health, talking and interested about agriculture and agroecology in particular, of course the link between agriculture and these outcomes is food and what we eat. And the focus over the past 100 years has very much been on the nutritive component of food. So how much fat, how much carbohydrates, how much iron, zinc, these types of things are in food, and how that influences nutrition, health, life expectancy. But what my work has been doing is trying to expand that to think about all of the other things that are in foods that we consume. And particularly thinking about pesticide residues in food and how those might also contribute to these same outcomes. So just expanding sort of the chemicals within food that we are looking at. In terms of nutrition outcomes in India, this will not be a surprise to people. Of course, NFHS, the National Family Health Survey, came out with the 5th round just 2 years, a little over 1 year back actually. And these data showed some interesting trends actually, and I'll just flag that NFHS 6 has completed data collection, but the results are not out. So this data collection spans the COVID years. But what you can see in this slide is just what percent of adults, adult women on the left and men on the right, have different forms of malnutrition. And when I say malnutrition, I tend to refer to not just undernutrition, but also things like obesity and nutrition-related diseases like diabetes. So what you can see is that, in fact, in India now, you can see that underweight, particularly in adults, is actually going down. So the green arrow indicates it's going down compared to previous NFHS rounds. But it's also much lower than abdominal obesity, so a high hip to waist ratio. And the other thing you can see is that diabetes itself is actually rising in India, and this is true not just in urban areas, but also in rural areas. So take a place like Andhra Pradesh, where a lot of our work is. About 1 in 5 adult men has diabetes in rural areas, not just in urban areas. The other thing to point out here is anemia. I'm sure people have read the news that when NFHS 5 came out, that anemia rates had actually increased compared to the previous year, or the previous round of NFHS. And that was true both in women and men. And one final thing on this slide I wanted to point out is that people often focus on anemia in women, and of course that's really important. It's 60% of women in NFHS 5. But interestingly, the prevalence of anemia in men is almost 1 in 3. And that's interesting because of the underlying biology. You would expect women to have a very high rate of anemia. Even in the UK, where I run a national diet survey, that in adolescent girls in the UK, upwards of 40% are experiencing anemia. So this is it's a biological process that happens to some extent with menstruation, which is a big predictor of anemia. And so I think it's interesting in the Indian context, this almost 1/3 of men, because it does suggest that there's some underlying contributor, and I'll talk a little bit about diet diversity, that may be contributing to anemia and these micronutrient deficiencies in both women who have this underlying biology as well as men. In terms of next slide, which shows the same NFHS 5 data for children under 5 years, the picture's a little bit different with kids, where undernutrition is much more prevalent, but we are seeing a big increase in overweight. Universally around the world, kids have a lower prevalence of overweight and obesity compared to adults, but we see this really big uptick. So something's happening between when they're under 5 and when they hit the age of 15, particularly in those adolescent years, where we're seeing this increase in overweight and obesity. So there's lots to explore in that space. But again, anemia pops up as being really prevalent in the sample. So what could be contributing to these national trends that we see in nutrition? Diets, of course, is the main thing that we've been looking at. And earlier this year, Dr. Kapoor up at ISI, the Indian Institute, Statistical Institute up in Delhi, and his team published a really great report that summarized the latest NSSO data on household expenditures on food. And they compared, though the methodology changed between 2011 and the 2023 survey, they did a really good, excellent job of comparing those two surveys to look at trends in food consumption over time. This survey is household level, so one limitation of that survey is we don't know distribution within the household. So we don't know what women ate in the household, what kids ate, what the adult men ate. We just know what the household consumed. But what was interesting is for the first time ever, well, I guess ever since they've been monitoring expenditures over the past 70 years or so in terms of food expenditure, less than 50% of household income on average is going to food expenditure. And you can see that, and that decline happened in both rural and urban areas, but especially in rural areas actually. And the decline, the food group that contributed to that decline in their analysis was cereals. And so, of course, this suggests that PBS is having the desired effect in terms of loosening up household budgets, reducing expenditure on cereals, and allowing households that additional income to spend on more nutrient-dense foods, so things like fresh fruits and potentially animal-source foods. And in fact, that's exactly what the data show. So this increased expenditure on dairy products, eggs, fish and meat, these animal-source products, as well as fresh fruits. The biggest increase actually was in fresh fruits. But worryingly, there was also this increased expenditure on packaged processed foods. And that goes back to those trends that I showed with rising overweight, obesity, and diabetes. One final thing about this report, if you haven't read it yet, there's an interesting section where they look at seasonality. And what they find is actually, compared to 10 years ago, recent data suggests that there's less fluctuation in household expenditure, meaning that there's less seasonality in food consumption. And that was true for all the food groups analyzed, including fruits, suggesting that there's potentially a more reliable supply of these products throughout the year. The findings of the NSSO report are really similar to an evaluation that we've just finished up that was published today, actually, so funny enough, the timing. And I've included the link here, and my slides can be shared online so people can click this. But in this evaluation in UP, we looked at a farmer-producer organization, and we were really interested in understanding not just the impact of member FPOs on income, which has been explored previously, but the outcomes like diet diversity, and we actually also looked at women's empowerment, but I've not shown that here. And the reason we did that is we thought that being an FPO member, you might see, for example, increases in crop diversification or increases in income, which would then lead to an increase in diet diversity. So we were interested in testing out these pathways. And on the next slide, I show the impacts of that. So basically what we found was that if you were the farmers who were members, they had increased diet diversity. Diversity was driven, however, by increases in both healthy foods, so that all of these nutrient-rich foods increase, whether it be different types of vegetables, fresh fruits, some of the animal source foods like curd and fish, but also they had an increase in unhealthy foods. So again, you see that as diets transition, as household income goes up, you're not just buying the healthy foods, but also the unhealthy foods. And I think that this is, when we think about food systems and production systems, this is something that we have to keep in mind, because really the leading cause of death in India right now is cardiovascular disease. And so we need to try and think about what sorts of interventions can we do that promote the healthy foods and discourage the unhealthy foods. So when thinking about that, I thought it was worthwhile to just mention this really helpful tool that I teach in my classes back in the UK. And this is sort of an intervention ladder. And so it basically summarizes what types of interventions from a public health standpoint can you implement in order to impact people's behaviors. And I think it was originally developed actually for tobacco a lot when thinking about unhealthy foods. And at the very bottom of the ladder is doing nothing. And at the very top is the strongest thing you could do, which is eliminate choice. So if you take the example of tobacco, that would be banning tobacco or banning smoking, for example, making it illegal. So it's obviously a very extreme intervention, but in between these, it kind of ranks the different types of interventions that can be done, whether that's taxing things or reducing the cost of healthy things, But what I wanted to point out is just one step up from doing nothing is educating people. I think that there is some risk when I talk to people about how do we address this increase in unhealthy foods in India. People quickly say we need to educate people. And unfortunately, the evidence suggests that that is not effective. That people know what a healthy diet is. I mean, everyone in this room knows fruits and vegetables are healthy, I would assume, for the most part. But do we all eat, the 5 a day, 5 recommended fruits and vegetables every day? Most people probably don't hit that. Actually, in this room, probably a lot of people do, but usually at the population level, they're not. So, yeah. So just to think about other innovations, not just educating people on unhealthy and healthy foods, but other things a little bit further up in this ladder in order to address that. One of the key things I think that should be considered, I took this snapshot many years ago actually, here in Hyderabad. I think we need to think about, for example, kids from marketing of ultra-processed unhealthy foods. This is just really pervasive, not just in India, but right around the world, including the UK, where unhealthy foods like this are advertised as being healthy to kids, and they really confuse parents. And so I think that trying to think about potentially marketing regulations, regulating how you market products. So for example, should you be able to market a sugary beverage like chocolate milk as being a growth promoting, nutrient-rich food when it's really high in sugar and really wouldn't be advised for kids. So just moving up that ladder. So the rest of my presentation just focuses on the other exposures in food, moving beyond the nutrient components to think about pesticide exposure, which was mentioned is a big focus of my own work. So next slide. I'm not going to go through all the evidence on health effects of pesticides that we've been working on and others globally. But just summarizing some of the things that I think have the most conclusive evidence to date in terms of links between pesticide exposure and health outcomes. And there are really two different biological pathways that most pesticide classes act through. So the first one, on the first bullet here, is as an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. So acetylcholine is the most common neurotransmitter in our bodies, and a major class of pesticides such as organophosphates, which are widely used, they prevent the breakdown of that neurotransmitter in our bodies. So it accumulates within our brains and our nerve cells. This can, of course, have an impact on child development, their brain development, and that's something that we're looking at in Andhra Pradesh is potentially, as farmers transition to natural farming, are there benefits in terms of children's development in those households? Function in older age. So there's a very large study of farmers called the Agriculture Cohort Study in the US, which has been following pesticide sprayers for decades now. And one of the clear signals in that cohort is that these sprayers are at increased risk of Parkinson's disease. The other pathway that's well established is this endocrine disruption pathway. And this is the pathway that leads to things like diabetes, but also cancer outcomes, as well as reproductive functions, particularly on male fertility. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight, because I don't know if this is in the news in India, but in the US, which is where I'm originally from, these lawsuits against Monsanto, which is now owned by Bayer, are a huge deal. It was just actually, Bayer was just at Congress talking about this 2 weeks back. So basically what's going on in the US right now is there's a chemical called glyphosate, which is an herbicide, and Monsanto makes it still, which is owned by Bayer. And there have been over 100,000 lawsuits filed against them, and they've already paid out $11 billion to these plaintiffs. And I know I'm over on time, I'll finish this in 1 second. But I just wanted to say that it's interesting, the reason this is interesting is that they are now saying, because of these lawsuits, they're threatening to pull glyphosate from the US market, which is the biggest market. And I don't know what this means for India, but if they pull it from the US market, I would be slightly worried about it, because I know herbicide use is already coming up here. So it's something maybe to just keep an eye on, but it is actually really unprecedented that this litigation could potentially result in the banning of one of the most widely used pesticides in the US. Final bit really actually is that in addition to looking at how consuming exposure to pesticides leads to adverse outcomes, you can also look at how consuming organic foods protects you or improves your health outcomes. So this is one of the most famous studies that's looked at that. It's a French study that's looked at over 30,000 participants over more than a decade now. And they have found a significant reduced risk of diabetes with increased consumption of organic food. And just to put this in perspective, the effect of consuming organic food in this study is comparable in effect size to the effect of consuming sugary drinks. So everyone knows that sugary drinks, of course, increase risk of diabetes. This study is showing that organic food consumption can protect you to the same extent that increases your risk. I could probably explain that better, but I'm happy to clarify later. So next slide. I'll skip over these details. Again, I'll share these slides, but just to say that there have been studies that show, to just kind of complete that pathway, that consuming organic food significantly reduces your exposure to pesticides as measured in your urine within 2 days of consuming an all-organic diet. So these effects can be realized almost immediately. So it's a very acute response. So we can skip over these. These just show that evidence of reduced exposure. So we're doing this large randomized controlled trial in Andhra Pradesh that's looking at the health effects of transitioning to natural farming. We've just finished the end-line data collection last month. I'm looking at our project manager and our field supervisors in the back. We've just finished the end-line data collection, so the final results we're expecting sometime this summer. But I have some preliminary results that I wanted to just close with on the next slide, I think. Yes, here. We have, in a pilot, we looked at urinary pesticide exposure in APCNF, Andhra Pradesh Community Managed Natural Farming farmers, as well as chemical farmers. And what we found was that even in this sample where they're not exclusive natural farmers, so they're still practicing a mix. On some of their land, they're naturally farming, on others, they're chemical farming. Even with that mix, we found significantly lower levels in 2 of the 3 biomarkers that we looked at. And I think this is quite remarkable because the difference was quite substantial, and this is a small sample, so it suggests a very strong signal coming from this pesticide pilot that we did. The third one didn't significantly reduce, and this could be the mix of practices, or it could be the fact that these farmers are not consuming only the food that they're growing. They're also, of course, getting PDS, rice, they're getting food from markets, so there could be some other routes of exposure, not just through farming. Okay, so I think I'll just close there. I think this is just about our diet, but the next one I think is just, yeah, this is kind of my concluding slide. I just added this actually right before I came, because we are very much focused on pesticide exposure, but we've just recently started thinking about monitoring heat exposure in farmers, getting back to what was said about climate change. farmers are not just exposed to pesticides. There's so many occupational exposures that need to be explored when thinking about the health of farmers. So looking forward to questions and discussion about kind of broadening the work that we're doing, thinking about laborers and their well-being. So anyway, sorry I've run a little bit over, but thank you again, and looking forward to questions, and we'll stick around as well for discussion.
Thank you, Lindsay, for touching upon the pressing issues in India, like is also biggest problem and needs to be increased, and also unhealthy eating pattern is growing. So you touched upon very important aspects of nutrition. Yeah, it's time for the questions. We'll allow audience for 2-3 questions, then we'll take all the questions from online.
Hello, Dr. Lindsay, I was just wondering what kind of data you relied upon when you said 1 out of 3 men in India. Where is the data source from? And it's very really worried about that situation, because we know that women are very anemic, but the men 1 in 3 is really alarming. I just want to know a little bit more about that.
I think this is working, yeah.
I'm actually a scientist from, national system. I'm a scientist from national systems.
Fantastic.
I think you've got a hand mic. Lindsay, I think you should just use the hand mic.
I don't think it's working. Oh, this one, sorry.
There you go.
So that data that I showed of the anemia in men is the National Family Health Survey. In that survey, they use a pinprick test to look at hemoglobin, similar to a blood glucose test. That measures your blood sugar. You can do a finger prick test that tests hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin is what carries oxygen throughout our body and is the key diagnostic for anemia. And so in that study, which is a national survey, so it's not a venous blood, which would be, but it's a finger prick. I think the thing to keep in mind is that it's the same, they use the same test for men and women. And so I think it's just thinking about if there is any measurement error occurring from that measurement, it will be the same for both men and women. So the fact that it's high in men, I think, is noteworthy, and it's not discussed. And I think it's quite important, yeah, given the biology, yeah.
Do you have some study on socio-economic impact?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the NSSO report that I mentioned from ISI, Dr. of Anemia, and I think that that's really important. I don't think it's the time to get into fortification, but I think really we need to get serious about diversifying diets. Just fortifying enough. In NFHS, we only measure anemia, but there are many nutrients, iodine, other things that vitamin E, vitamin A, that we don't measure. And most people who have one micronutrient deficiency, say iron, they also have other micronutrient deficiencies. And so I think we need to think about the whole diet and not just one nutrient. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Ma'am, thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. And as already mentioned, the data is mind-blowing. It's like, maybe if you can share with us more elaborate reports, it would be great help for us. And I'm vividly seeing type 2 diabetes when people consume organic foods. There can be 35% reduction. That's great news, actually. That can help our farmers, everybody, both ends. Do you have any data for the people who are already diabetic, if they move forward to organic diet? Any specific data do you have?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We don't have any data in the Indian context, as far as I'm aware. We have measured diabetes in our study in Andhra Pradesh, so we'll definitely be able to look at that in that study. Other studies have shown some slight improvement in blood glucose control in Europe and the US. So I think there's definitely some potential there, but more work is needed in the Indian context. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Srijit Mishra, and thank you for your presentation. I have two related questions. I think when you talk about unhealthy food and how to reduce it, it reminds of that tax increase, I think, for sugar candy, where after the tax increase, actually consumption of sugar candy increased because they could not prevent the choice. There were other sources where the choice is there. Now coming back, so if you want to bring in reduced choice, I think what Subhash Sharma ji with his nature as professor and university mentioned, so it takes us back to those kind of solutions. We have to not only reduce choices which are unhealthy or harmful, we need to bring in policy and suggestions which will increase healthier choices.
I 100% agree. Nothing to add. I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Let's have one last question, unfortunately, and then we'll come back in the discussion.
There's a very widespread myth that Indians are protein deficient, and at least among the top 20%, there's been a lot of explosion of anecdotal data of explosion of protein powders that are being consumed in India. We see a lot of data coming around that. Is there some kind of evidence that show that Indians have sort of some kind of protein deficiency, or would you sort of throw some light on that?
So you could definitely have some protein deficiency if you rely too much on rice or wheat for your calories. So if, say, you're getting 50% of your calories, in our study in Andhra, I think it's around 46%, not quite 50% of calories from polished white rice, you would definitely expect protein intake to be too low. I guess the question goes back to this question of, is it supplements that are the answer or diversity? You can get protein, plenty of protein, if you eat a diverse diet. So I think the solution is not to consume the protein powders, but rather to consume food, a diversity of foods which are protein. Yeah.
Sorry, we'll come back during the discussion section. Also, because I know.
I would like to bring you back to the second or third slide, where you had a comparison between FPO and non-FPO farmer families. I want to more explanation on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that and to share also a policy brief that we've prepared on that study with you, Divya, if you could share it with the participants. But Divya was involved in the study as well. But we looked at, it was just a one snapshot of one point in time where we looked at farmer producer households and those that were not part of an FPO. And we were just interested in other outcomes. Obviously, everyone looks at income, but there are other things that could benefit FPO farmers. Increased diet diversity. We did women's empowerment, interestingly. One of the main challenges was that even the FPO women still reported challenges of getting access to credit. And so that kind of reduced the score that we were using for women's empowerment in that particular study. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think it was essentially that farmers in FPOs had more diverse marketing channels, they were growing slightly more diverse crops, and also seemed to be having more diverse diets. Although the causal pathways, I think, are still a bit difficult to establish and need a lot more data. But that's, at least so far, we know that those in FPOs are faring better. And if people are wondering why I'm at Lindsay is my PhD super.
Thank you. So next we have with us, I need not to introduce him, is G.V. Ramanjaneyulu, but to give the glimpse of his profile, He is a leading agriculture scientist and executive director for CSA. He has been instrumental in promoting agroecological farming and policy innovations across multiple states, including Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Chhattisgarh, and so on. He will now take us through a detailed analysis of the agriculture landscape in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, reflecting on the lessons learned over past 2 decades. Welcome, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's time to heat up the room. Let's look at what is happening in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and then we will talk about it. Next, please. For others who doesn't know about CSA works we started 20 years back, and we work across the country. Our major work is in Andhra, Telangana, Maharashtra, but we also work in Chhattisgarh, Karnataka, and many other states supporting government programs. In all, we work with about 50,000 farmers, and also support about 66 farmer producer organizations which are promoted by CSA. So when we started CSA, the idea was to look at end to end, not at one part of the problem, because all the time everybody was talking about focusing on one area and then trying to pass on the blame to other areas. So we thought from food production to public policy to marketing we should work on, so that we can learn everything and put the things together. That's how CSA started. Next, please. So we're a group of organizations. Sahajaram is another farmer producer organization. It's a federation of farmer producer organizations which sells organic food directly to the consumers. So in the regular market, if farmers gets about say 30% of the consumer's price, Sahajaram tries to get give around 50% to the farmers. So some of the produce is displayed outside. You can also see. Next. And the new entrant in our group is the Academy for Agroecology. This is a first of its kind research and training center which is located near the Nujividu in Andhra Pradesh. This is spread over 38 acres where all models of organic and natural farming are under display. People can visit, stay and learn. There is a space for about 70 to 80 people stay at any point of time. Next, please. DDS is our partner, and many of you know about DDS. For the last 40 years, spearheading the millet movement in this country, and Deccan Development Society also runs a Krishi Vijnana Kendra. I think it was India's first Krishi Vijnana Kendra which focuses only on organic and natural farming. I think that's why they have put up the fight for the last so many years, which government is now talking about. So together we are trying to do many things from production to markets, so and then the public policy. So this seminar is part of it. For the last 20 years, we have been very vocal and very active in the public policy space. But for the last 10 years, we took a back step, and then now we are trying to come back again. So this is the first workshop towards that direction. Next, please. So let's look at what is happening with agriculture. Some data sets I want to put forth and prepare ground so that Devendra can actually tell what we all need. Well, the last census talks about 54% of people depending on agriculture in India. So when 54% of the people depend on agriculture for livelihood, what is the amount of money spent on that? I think that's a first question we should ask. Contribution is only 15%, but what is the money actually spent on that? Giving livelihood for so many people, what is the money spent? And within that 54% also nearly 90% of the people are small and marginal. Very small and marginal, and if you look at any of the workshops on agriculture, we talk about that we have small and marginal farmers, so people are not able to adopt a technology. So we need to have aggregation or move the farms up. Thus, if your clients are small and marginal farmers, your technology should be fitting into that. You cannot say, since clients are unable to buy my product, I need to clients have to change. Because the entire public extension and market research system is built for them. And that's where the investment goes, and now they are saying the clients are wrong, rather than talking about the technology. The economic crisis is serious. In fact, the incomes are going down. The average income of farmers is around 10,000 rupees today on average. And then when government talked about doubling the farmers' income, it landed up somewhere around 60%. And we will see actually how it happened and then where it happened. But the serious issue is about the growing indebtedness. There's a serious growing indebtedness over a period of 3 to 4 years. Every farmer is landing into crisis. Every farmer is in this country is landing in crisis because there's a cost of cultivation which is increasing, there's a cost of living which is increasing, but the land is not increasing. Obviously, no farmer in this country can buy land. All the lands which are bought, say if you take the last 20 years history, go to any registrar office and see, all lands are bought by the urbanites. No farmer has bought land because there is no surplus money with any farmer. As a result, you are not increasing your land, you cannot increase your product price. So obviously, even if you are a good farmer, good land, you are not actually getting out of the crisis. Indebtedness is increasing. So where actually the problem lies? If you look at the national level, crop income coming from the crop production is only 37%. Crop production is only 37%. Telangana is much worse. Andhra Pradesh is 21%. The income crop production is 21%, and Telangana is around 30%. Which means nearly 70% of the income has to come from other sources, which if the opportunities are available. If the opportunities are not available, it's basically the wage labor and then the livestock. Livestock is around 80%. So the rest of the things, people got stuck. There's no opportunities available. But the growth in agriculture is very low. So if you see the data shows that the income increase in crop production is just 26%. Just 26%. Over a long period, between 2012 to 2018, the increase is just 26%. And the major income increase actually happened on the wages and on the livestock. Income coming from these two sources. So on crop production, there is no income increase. The income increase prices are not increasing. So we need to look at holistically. Second, the landholding sizes are going down significantly. Here, if you look at year by year, in fact, if you take the data from 1970, it clearly shows the trend that the small holdings and marginal holdings are increasing significantly. And all this data is only about what is on paper. Again, there is a lot of is on paper. I would say based on the ownership. But land consolidation is also happening. So there needs to be a proper study to look at the land consolidation which is happening. At least every month I get at least 1 or 2 inquiries saying I have 500 acres, 800 acres. Can you help us with organic farming? So this is a contradiction which is in front of us. So we need to understand this and then work on it. Next please. And also when we talk about the share of income coming from different sources, multiple sources, etc. For the first 3-4 categories, we who form nearly 80% of the people, the large part of the income actually comes from non-agricultural sources. That's one of the reasons what we are seeing in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana particularly is that many people are not interested on agriculture. Why would they be interested? If it is giving just 20% of the income and then the growth of prices and growth of income is very low, who would be interested? So how do we make it more efficient and then how do we make it more productive and then helpful is something one need to certainly look for. Another important issue is the natural resource depletion, which is not much talked about. The soil formation, 1 centimeter of the soil takes nearly about 200 years. In a year, if all good agriculture practices are followed, it is about 1.5 tons, which is the soil is formed in a farm. If you are talking about very good organic farming practices, etc., it's about 1.5 tons soil forms in 1 year. We do 16 tons per year, per hectare. 16 tons per year. So the soil which is formed in 10 years, we are losing in 1 year. And that's because of the bad practices. We are leaving the soil open, we are tilling the soil, we are doing the puddling, we are leaving the soil. When there is a rain, it flows out. All the water which we see on the road will be brown in color because it is all carrying the soil. The siltation we are seeing in the lakes is all because of that. The desertification and land degradation data talks about 16 tons per hectare per year is the soil we are losing. So the soil which is formed in 10 years we are losing in 1 year. Why are we not seriously working on that? Why are we not seriously looking at it? And the data from the Indian Institute of Soil Science shows that 174 districts in this country are deficient in micronutrients. Very important. I'll come back to that data in the later slides. And the very important issue is also about water. We are pumping out so much water. Just to give you an example, if you take 1 acre of soil, 1 acre of rice production takes about nearly 60 lakh liters of water, right? It's about 1280 mm. 1280 mm, if you actually calculate in an area where 600 mm rain is there, like Telangana, you are using 5 years rain in one season. 5 years rain you are using in one season. So that's what is the depleting the groundwater. So the bad practices in terms of crops and cropping patterns is what is leading to these issues. We'll see how all this is impacting. Next please. Soil organic matter. In India, 67% of the soils are deficient in soil organic matter. They are very low in organic matter. Soil organic carbon is a measure of soil health. Basically, how much organic matter is there. So 67% of the soils in India have very low organic carbon. Next please. And then particularly coming to the Telangana, nearly 3.6 million hectares land is degraded in the last 10 years. This is what the DLD report says, the desertification and land degradation data report shows, and then much of it is because of water erosion. The excess water we created is what is taking away all this soil. Next please. Before this. And data from National Institute of Nutrition talks about there is a reduction in the nutrient content of the food. So the question which Lindsay brought out, that there is an anemia in this country, is because the food is deficient in nutrients. It's not just people. Food is deficient in nutrients. The palak which you think is more having iron is not having iron. And this is 30 years data, if you look at, clearly analyzes that the depletion is happening. And most shocking is the next study. This is done by ICR. It talks about this is a nutrient drain. It talks about nearly 20 to 30% reduction in the nutrient content, even if nutrients are provided. They actually did a lab experiment which talks about this is reduction in the nutrient content because the plant varieties are unable to even take the nutrients. So we have bred varieties, we are maintaining the varieties in a way that you are unable to actually provide the nutrients. We'll go back. And so two important issues we need to remember here. When we talk about anemia in this country, it's the soils which are anemic. So if the soils are anemic, crops are anemic, if the crop is anemic, food is anemic, people are anemic. So by adding iron into your food, we are not going to solve the problem. We need to add actually iron into the soils. So how do we deal with that is an important question. Second important issue, this study also brought out the heavy metals increasing in your food. And it says 20 to 30% increase in the heavy metals happening. And a couple of days back, there was a shocking report from Buldana in Maharashtra. If some of you have seen that, a report which said suddenly people realized there is a hailfall happening significantly, and that is because of the selenium content in the wheat. And when the report came out, then we realized ICMR has published the same report in January. And the report was public, but no one took it serious because they talked about selenium content increasing in food. It never got attention, but when people said hailfall is happening, then people took attention. So it's also about how do we present the case, etc. Right. Next. So the issue with chemical fertilizers which we talk about is largely about declining fertilizer response ratio. This people are not talking about. Today, if you are putting in chemical fertilizers, the yield is just about 3.5 kg. I'm talking about 2005 data. This is today, it will be much lower. It has reduced from 13 kg per kg of fertilizer to 3.5 kg. Which essentially means you have to put more and more to get the same yield. You are getting on the treadmill. So to stand where you are, you have to run. The moment you stop, you fall. That's where India stands. So the fertilizer subsidy today, which is about nearly 2.5 lakh crores if we talk about, 2.5 lakh crores if we divide the total area in this country is about 7,000 rupees per acre. So if you are using fertilizer, you get, and if you are using more, you get more. If you are not using anything, you won't get anything. So what is this? So people who are actually conserving the soil, supporting the the soil conservation and then increasing the organic matter in the soil are not supported. The people are actually destroying it is what is supported. And every kg of nitrogenous fertilizer, which is subsidized by 95%, gives out nearly 5 kg of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions in this country, which means the greenhouse gas emissions in this country are subsidized by government of India. Right? Who is the biggest culprit? Is the government of India. So how do we deal with these things is an important issue. Next please. So, and then the water crisis again, we use more water, and whenever there is water we shift towards rice. And we have 16% of the world's population, but only 4% of the water resources. Next please. So from here let's look at what is happening between Andhra and Telangana. Telangana government, after its formed in 2014, took a big decision that there will be a crop patterns, regulated crop patterns, and then pushed for rice and cotton cultivation. And the data shows that the area increased by more than 250%. Rice. Today, Telangana is the largest rice producers in the country. And all this water is coming from the dams, which are built, new dams, and then these are all pumping water out from the groundwater or from the surface water. Basically, it's a lift irrigation dams. So without getting into the calculations of how much electricity we are using to pumping out water, the amount of water used and then the amount of money invested to create such infrastructure facility has landed the previous government in huge crisis. And today rice occupies nearly about 40% of the crop area in Telangana. And an average estimate shows that we need about 25 lakh hectares of land, and today it is more than 1 crore acres. 1 crore acres. We need about 25 lakh acres of rice production in this state to feed all of us, but today we are producing nearly 1 crore acres. Next please. So what is happening is that there is a soil destruction happening because of the puddling. There is a nitrate content increasing in water, so you cannot drink your water. You have to buy, even in the rural areas, you have to buy water because the nitrate content in water is increasing. Air GHG emissions are increasing. We made a simple calculation which looks at per acre how much GHG emissions are there, carbon dioxide equivalent. It's about 10 tons per acre. 1 million acres. Calculate how much it comes to. 100 million tons. 100 million tons to absorb, it takes nearly forest area which is 8 times the Telangana area. Is a kind of pollution which is caused by nearly 85% of cars in India driven for 1 year non-stop. Pollution caused by just the paddy fields in Telangana. Why are we not taking it serious? Why are we not reducing it? We go on a dharna in Delhi and then ask for procurement. The same money is available. Why are we not supporting farmers who are growing millets, pulses, oilseeds? And in a situation where the area under rice is increasing, any sensible decision would be to reduce the rice area, so incentivize other crops. But the decision taken by even the current government is to increase the rice price. They said 500 rupees additional price will be paid to rice. So if you want to shift towards pulses, oilseeds, vegetables, it's your choice. So that's the kind of wrong choices which are pushing us into the deep crisis. Next please. Biosafety, I think, is also again very serious issue. The pesticide use is increasing significantly. Just to put the numbers into it, Telangana uses nearly 900 grams of pesticide use per hectare, and it has increased nearly by 5 times in the last 10 years. 5 times. Whereas at the same time, Andhra Pradesh, after the separation, it has reduced significantly, nearly 55% it has reduced. So we started at the same point in 2014. Between 2004 to 2010, there was a 50% use reduction. And then the government stopped all the programs on non-pesticidal management. 2010 to 2014, again there was an increase. 2014, when the government states separated, both the states took a different pathways in terms of crop choices, and then that led to the whole issue. So when it clearly shows it's a lack of interest, it's a lack of plan which is happening. And we have seen a couple of days back there was a crisis in one of the districts. When we went there, we have seen a humic acid was sold as a pesticide. No regulation, simply sold like that. People sell pesticides, there is no bill, and the government officer says, since it is not sold through the regulated counters, we don't know. So this was the situation, and heavy poisoning cases are coming up. This is a reality in front of us. Also about unregulated GM crops. Prime Minister's office in 2019, I think there was a study done, and it said 20% of the crop area is under HT cotton. Completely unregulated, not permitted. It's a 20% of the area is under HT cotton. What are we talking about? Last November, there is a study done by a research center in Tamil Nadu, which talks about 4 locations in Telangana. They found GM maize. So the crops which are not tested, pesticides which are not recommended, they are all under in front of us all around. So these are all going unregulated. Next please. Andhra Pradesh government, so why the difference between Andhra Pradesh, Telangana came in is about government had a program called Andhra Pradesh Community Natural Farming where they are supporting for a transition. So there are community resource persons, there is a systems which are built. For a period of time, hand-holding support is provided for the farmers to make the shift. Last 10 years, Telangana government said, we don't believe in natural farming, so even the money which came from the center was not used. And this year, government talked about doing it on a fairly large scale, and in the budget they allocated, the budget paper mentioned 1.6 crores, and when we spoke to the department, they said it's about 4 crores. And just to give a comparison, Karnataka government, to support one block, they allocated 10 crores. So that's the kind of thing. So there's a lip service, but no action which is happening. So this is the last slide. So what do we do in all these things? I think we need to talk about a comprehensive solution. It's not about making, say, I do a small, say, 2 acres into natural farming. I talk about millets and then promote millets here. I'll introduce something here, there. It doesn't work. I think we need to look at a comprehensive approach where the policy ecosystem changes. Green revolution happened not because of high-yielding varieties. It has not happened because of the fertilizers, because of the whole ecosystem was created. There was an FCI, there was a bank nationalization, credit was provided, extension system was created, distribution system was created, agricultural universities were set up. So it's a whole ecosystem. So what is the new ecosystem we require? I think that is a question we all need to look for. And another important issue is the income security of farmers is the most important thing. We need to look at target and the balancing act between the cost of urbanization, cost of living, and then the and also about the support received, etc. should not be the headache of the farmer. Should not be the headache of the farmer. It should be the government responsibility to see that the balancing act is done. Say whenever there is a pay commission looks at how much salary has to be paid for each of the employee based on the how do you attract a talent, and then how that one person underneath will feed 5 people in the rural areas or 3 people in the urban areas. So we need to come with some kind of formula where farmers' income becomes very critical, and all policies should be around that. We should not have a kind of system where we are trying to push parts of the jigsaw puzzle and then leaving the rest of the puzzle to the farmers and then asking them to solve. I think that's not going to happen. Next, please. So another important issue is people talk about FPOs. Yes, FPOs are a really solution, but are we supporting them? Are we supporting them? It's an important issue. We are not supporting them. We are not giving them enough time to evolve. We are not giving them enough access to credit. So I think the government should talk about an FPO policy where credit access, affordable credit access is important. And like we have all the incubation and support systems for startups, we should have support systems for the FPOs also. We also need to have a system where we can revive the sick cooperatives. When there is so much facilities created for reviving the sick industry, why not? Why not we talk about reviving the FPOs as well? And also building public infrastructure should be the responsibility of the government. I think that should also not get into the loans which are taken by the people to build a warehouse or setting up a processing facility kind of thing. We need to talk about insurance mechanisms where we need to have micro insurance kind of models which can be tried out to the FPOs. Next please. And direct income support measure in Telangana was the first one to start Raitu Bandhu. So if you look at the Raitu Bandhu has literally drained the money from the public expenditure, public exchequer, and it went to the people who are not actually deserving. It has become an incentive for holding the land, rather than actually supporting the farmers to produce more and cover the gap. It was not the case. So we need to focus on, we need to bring in a system where it is targeted. Target on the cultivators, which also means you need to have a system of identifying cultivators. It should not be a kind of incentive just for holding the land. Second important, there should be a ceiling. I think there should be a ceiling beyond a certain land holding. It should not be given any such support. I think these two are something which are very, very critical. Next please. Raitu Bharosa in Andhra Pradesh, the new system is coming up, but we need to figure out how the new system would be. But the old system had targeted a household, not on the per acre basis, whereas the Raitu Bandhu was based on the per acre basis. This was a household basis to cover the income cost. So the previous government was talking about 30,500 rupees, and also interestingly they came up with this Crop Cultivators Rights Act of 2019, where tenant farmers were identified and then they were also given both access to credit and also to the Raitu Bharosa. Whereas in Telangana, there was no effort to actually give access to tenant farmers for the credit. Next please. So another important issue, like Subhash Sharma ji was also mentioning, the income for farmers cannot be about just yield and price. We should think about more than that. If I'm harvesting more water, if I'm improving the soil fertility, how these can be quantified and supported to the farmers is something which is important. So we need to look at ecosystem services also. If around Hyderabad, if people use the same pesticides, it's not just your food getting contaminated, your water is also getting contaminated. Obviously, so if Punjab farmers are not improving their farming, obviously Delhi is not going to get good food, right? And many other pollutants are coming like that, because unless these systems are in place and systems are supported, and if you are just thinking it is the farmer's responsibility to do everything, it's not going to happen. So we need to think about a new model where all these ecosystem services are also quantified and supported. Next please. So the policy shift is essentially to look at focusing on reducing risk in agriculture, and then the residual risk should be covered. Today, insurance is the only mechanism to cover the insurances. Couple of examples I would say, this is again coming up from Andhra Pradesh experience. So if you have a suitable cropping patterns, if you have reduced fertilizer use, chemical use, and if you cover universally the insurance, the premiums will come down. You know, Telangana withdrew from crop insurance because the premiums went up. They said 33% was the premium. And today in Andhra Pradesh it is just 4%. Lowest in the country. That is because all farmers are insured by the government and then the premium comes down. So we need to have a mechanism of risk management. And insurance is the last mechanism in the entire thing where you cover the residual risk which is not covered by any other mechanism. It cannot just keep one mechanism and say that will cover everything. So insurance, we need to make the shift. And all policies should be brought under one umbrella which can ensure income security to the producers. And then Farmers Income Commission we talked about, and then the budgetary allocations. I think budgetary allocations should be increased and they should be rightly be spent. So I stop here, look forward for the questions.
Thank you, sir, for driving the change in agriculture sector, especially in AP and Telangana. We'll be taking 2-3 questions from the audience.
I have a kind of a dumb question. So it's kind of, so you talked about like how the income of the farmers is not increasing, but their expenses are, and their cost of cultivation is increasing. And in Lindsay's presentation, it kind of also talked about, how 50% of urban and rural incomes are being spent on just food. So doesn't it just mean that, am I wrong in this, but doesn't it feel like the entire food system is holding on a brink, and any shock of it can make it all collapse? And and the only reason it's just working out is because a lot of people are basically just surviving off whatever they're doing, kind of a thing, whatever they're growing or the local ecosystem. So, is there really a systemic way to address this? Because it feels like they're not going to spend more money. They want to spend lesser money because their incomes are also not increasing. Nowhere in the country are people making more money. So it's not just a farmer problem, but the fact that nobody is actually making money, or we don't have enough money to spend on this.
That's not the case. Say, if you look at the 50% of the income which is spent on food, it is from the rural areas food we are talking about. Because in India, large number of people doesn't have money. The people who have money are not also spending. Say in Hyderabad, people who spend only 5% of their income on food, or just 1% on their food, are also very price sensitive about tomatoes becoming 6 to 10 rupees. Kind of thing. That's where the issue lies. So how do we say you cannot have a differential price for both? So that's how Food Security Act came in terms of subsidizing and then supporting the food. But the food baskets have not expanded. So best way is to actually have their own food grown. So there are a lot of initiatives across the country where kitchen gardens and then local distribution of food, those kind of things are happening. So we need to rethink about the food also. Food systems, localized, how they can work. Today PDS, if you take nearly how much? I think per every kg of rice distributed, 16 rupees is spent on logistics. So if you avoid long distance transportation, 16 rupees can be saved, and then you can pass on to the producer and consumer. Which is not the case. You are basically feeding the rats and then you are feeding the vehicles all around. That's what is happening. So there are new ways of dealing with the problem, is what I would say.
One more question.
Yeah. Sharma.
I wanted to ask you, how say our civil society has been able to influence the
The question is very simple. I am sorry, every time I think I am getting up. But I had to ask you this question because how effective you and rest of the civil society on the government systems, because you have wonderful policies like bringing down the rice cultivation and enhancing the insurance support. These things are not happening on their own, especially with reference to the rice cultivation. I remember when the state was divided in 2014, Telangana government insisted on the farmers to bring down the rice cultivation, and a couple of years I remember it was very effective also. Then I don't know what happened. Now the rice cultivation, it is I think basically because the farmers are unable to sustain on the other crops, and it's a kind of rice is kind of insurance crop.
Yeah, I'm
not sure.
I'll start with that question and then answer the first question also. They took a decision that the rice area will increase. They took a proactive decision, and they, I don't know how many of you know, in 2020 there is a ban on sale of seeds. Other than rice and cotton, you cannot sell any other seed. Maize was not sold. So actually the people who had the dairy went on dharna asking for a maize seed because there is no maize seed available. So that's a kind of imposition happened on the cropping pattern. Then they said, now you need to withdraw, but by the time soils are all puddled and then you cannot come back from rice. That's what is in this country. From our side, the way CSA operates and many civil society organizations operate is we try to set up small examples which are working, and then there will be a confidence built with the working with the government, and then always government is not monolith. There are cracks here and there where we can go and talk. So a couple of examples I would say Andhra Pradesh National Farming Program, it was almost 20 years of working with Vijay Kumar Garu and then women self-help groups which led to the situation. Now it has become a national program. We started in Dantewada, which is in Chhattisgarh. We started with few acres and then with few farmers. An organization called Nirman started. We also partnered with them, and today we could make the entire district as organic. We did similar thing in Karnataka. We started with small scale. Today the district government allocated around 10 crores per block to become fully organic. So efforts, so rice cultivation, we now are working in Nizamabad where we could establish nearly about 500 acres where crops are grown without using excess water. So we used alternate wetting and drying, we used SRI and then 4 other methods, and then we could see that farmers are willing to transit. But the issue is about, are we able to support them for making the transition? So the plans we are making is next 5 years, we'll be reaching out to around 50. Work together. I think that's also is another important. How do we build coalition so that we can work together? I think that's where strength lies.
Please certainly putting your questions on the mentee, because we'll try to summarize some of them for the discussion section, and if they're not answered here, they might be answered on some other public forum. So please do put your questions on.
Sir, thank you, sir. So, my name is Sai, Andhra Pradesh Ramanjaneyulu. సో బేసిక్గా మీరు స్కీమ్స్ గురించి డిస్కస్ చేశారు కదా ఇప్పుడు ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ అంతా నుంచి. సో రైతు భరోసా రైతు బంధు, సో ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో చూడడం చూసాను రైతు భరోసా స్కీమ్స్ ఇటువంటివి. బట్ ఎవరైతే ఓన్ ఉన్నారో వాళ్ళకి అప్లికబుల్ అవుతుంది బేసిక్గా. ఎవరైతే కౌలు రైతులు ఉన్నారో వాళ్ళకైతే ఇవి స్కీమ్స్ ఏమి అప్లికబుల్ అవ్వట్లేదు బేసిక్గా. సో ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మేము మీరు ఒక 8 acres చేస్తున్నాం, మా డాడీ చేస్తారనమాట. సో 8 acresకి మేము ఫార్మింగ్ స్కీమ్స్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో పర్టికులర్గా లూజ్ అయిపోతున్నాం అనమాట. పిఎం కిసాన్ అని చెప్పి ఇవన్నీ చాలా ఉన్నాయి. యాక్చువల్గా 13,500 రూపీస్ ఏవైతే స్కీమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి కూడా. సో ఇవి గవర్నమెంట్ ఎందుకు ఫోకస్ చేయలేదు? ఇవి బేసిక్గా వాళ్ళ దగ్గర మేము మ్యూజిక్ తీసుకుంటున్నాం కదా, ఆ ల్యాండ్స్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో మేమే చేస్తున్నాం, వాళ్ళు ఏం చేయట్లేదు. ఎవ్రీ ఇయర్ మేము పే చేస్తున్నాం సమ్ ఆఫ్ ది 70,000 80,000 వాళ్ళకి. అందులో లాస్ ఆఫ్ ప్రాఫిట్స్ కూడా ఉంటాయి అందులో. సో వాళ్ళకి అన్ని అనవసరం కూడా యాక్చువల్గా ల్యాండ్ హోల్డర్స్కి. సో బేసిక్గా గవర్నమెంట్ ఎందుకని ఇన్వెస్టిగేట్ చేయట్లేదు, పర్టికులర్గా వాళ్ళకి ఎందుకు వెళ్ళట్లేదు స్కీమ్స్, దాని గురించి ఏమన్నా ఉంటుంది?
See, the problem is about government not ready to identify tenancy because they want to keep it unwritten. Contracts, either about the land lease contracts or about the contract farming, all these are kept just as a oral agreements. Nothing is on paper. Nothing is on paper because there is no strict laws and then there are no defined solutions on that. So, for example, the land right should be restricted to if you own a land, you have a property. This is a property right. But if you are a cultivator, then you have additional rights. Because many of the rights we are giving to the farm in the name of farmer today are for the cultivators. If they are not cultivating, you should not give them. But that where are we restricting that? Say for example, loan, interest-free loan. Why are we giving to the landowners only, not to the cultivators? Law says that, but there is no punishment if someone is not cultivating and taking the loan. Say Hyderabad takes nearly 23% of the agriculture credit in the Telangana. 5 cities in the country takes nearly 50% of the credit. So this is happening. You have all incentives if you own a land. All incentives. The land appreciates. You have income, tenancy. You get tenancy income. You also get interest-free loan. And if there is a crop failure, you get a compensation. And you can claim an income tax exemption. You know, the income tax exemption claimed by non-agriculturalists in this country is huge, much larger than the agriculture budget of the nation. So no one talks about these things because they are all inconvenient tools. I think that's something which we need to look at. Cultivators should get access to all these support systems. I think that requires a big policy shift which we need to make.
Sir, one more question. Organic farming గురించి మనం ఇక్కడ ఎడ్యుకేట్ చేస్తుంటారు బేసిక్గా చేయాలి అని చెప్పి. సో ఇటువంటి వాటి గురించి నేను ఎక్కడ వెళ్ళలేదు యాక్చువల్గా. బేసిక్గా మా తాతయ్య వాళ్ళు లేకపోతే చిన్నప్పుడు మనందరూ చిన్నప్పుడు ఎక్కువ బేసిక్గా చేసేవారు. ఈ ఫెర్టిలైజర్స్ ఇవన్నీ తక్కువ. సో రీసెంట్లీ అందరూ ఫెర్టిలైజర్స్కి బాగా అడిక్ట్ అయిపోయారు. ఎందుకంటే దిగుబడి కానీ బేసిక్గా ప్రాఫిట్స్ కానీ అందులో ఎక్కువ ఉంటాయి అని చెప్పి. సో ఇటువంటి వాటి మీద ఎక్కడ మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ కంపెనీస్ మనం ఎక్కడైనా అవేర్నెస్ ఏమైనా క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నాం ఫార్మర్స్ కి ఎడ్యుకేట్ చేస్తాం బేసిక్గా. నేనైతే ఇప్పుడు వచ్చి ఎక్కడ చూడలేదు, ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ తెలంగాణ లేదు కానీ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ అయితే ఎక్కడ చూడలేదు నా సర్కిల్ అయితే. సో దీని గురించి నేను తెలుసుకున్నాను.
సర్టన్లీ మాకు మీరు ఎక్కడ ఉన్నారు? రాజమండ్రి అన్నారా? సో మరి వీ హ్యావ్ ఆఫీసెస్ ఇన్ తెలంగాణ, ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్. మీకు బయట మీరు యూ కెన్ టేక్ ద నెంబర్, యూ కెన్ గివ్ యూ. నూజివీడి దగ్గర వీ హ్యావ్ రిసర్చ్ సెంటర్ వేర్ అండ్ ద ట్రైనింగ్ సెంటర్ వేర్ trainings are regularly done and all the models are also displayed. You can always come. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So next we have Dr. Devendra Sharma Garu, a renowned food and trade policy analyst with expertise in agriculture, intellectual property rights and food security. So he will be speaking on the crucial policy transitions needed to ensure income security for the farmers. Welcome you, sir, and the stage is yours.
Before Devendra takes Supreme Court appointed a committee. So whatever suggestions you make also can be appreciated.
A very young lady, I do have the habit of keeping my word. तो ये जो महिलाएं बहन जी जो ये फोटोग्राफी कर रही हैं, तो इन्होंने जब मुझे नमस्कार किया तो मुझे 2 मिनट लगे कि ये तो मैंने देखा है इनको, ये यहाँ पर कैसे। तब मुझे ख्याल आया कि ये तो डेक्कन डेवलपमेंट सोसाइटी के पिलर्स हैं जिन्होंने इतने दिन हम सबको सब जगह मंत्रमुग्ध रखा इस बात की। Anyway, the advantage of speaking last is that you don't have the burden to set the agenda of the house. So most of my co-panelists have done the job for me, made it easier for me, so I can go far from where they left. I don't know, कुछ दिन पहले मैंने एक खबर पढ़ी, आपने भी पढ़ी है, but उसमें एक aspect था कि there is something called as fitment factor. There is something called as fitment factor. And somebody asked this question, nobody's income is going up, so I just thought let me bring up this fitment factor. This fitment factor for quite some time I thought was relevant only for the people who visit the gyms, and I am since not a frequent visitor there, so मैंने कहा मेरे को तो ये effect नहीं होता. But the government has announced the 8th pay commission. In 2026 you will have the 8th pay commission. Applying the fitment factor would mean whether they are increasing your salaries by 2.5 or 2.8 or whatever they are trying to work it out. Now this is the 8th pay commission. We have the 9th pay commission, then we will have 10 years later we have the 10th pay commission. So 10th pay commission will be at the time when we are almost ready with Viksit Bharat. 2047, as you know, is the time for Viksit Bharat. So 2046, we will have a fitment factor at that particular time deciding what will be the employees' salaries. The salary of the PN, the lowest government employee, would be 4.5 lakh per month if you apply the fitment factors. And I think society leaders who are running civil society groups start worrying, because at that particular time when the government employees or the government PNs would be getting a salary of 4.5 lakh, 4.5 lakh only for the chaprasis. I wonder what will be the salary of the bureaucrats. And then similarly you will see a jump in their pensions also. And as was being said earlier, the average daily income a farmer earns only from farming is 27 rupees per day. Now 27 rupees compared to the 4.5 lakh a chaprasi will earn 30 years later, I think should set us very clearly on an understanding whether we would be able to correspondingly see that the income of the farmer will also go up in that same ratio or not, and so on. And yet, believe me, farmers will continue to be blamed that you are responsible for the budget going awry. Farmers will continue to face that. Nobody is going to ever talk about the employee salary. Is that the biggest problem the country has?
When I'm saying, please don't think that I don't want employees to get that salary. Please, you should always all be getting a higher salary. But imagine the imbalance it is going to create in the entire society at large at that particular time, not even worrying about it 30 years later, but even in 2026 when the 8th Pay Commission comes into play. Now, nobody in this country is talking about if farmers ka agar aloo or pyaj ka bhav, if the price of potato and tomato go in the newspapers and media, everyone is happy. But aloo pyaj, oh God, the entire, the country's economy has gone into doldrums, and so we must see that the perspective of looking at the income rise and what should be the farmer's income and so on, without making a comparison, you will never get a picture that you need to. You're very happy. All those who come in the government service would be very happy doing it. I know I was recently in a meeting with the IPS people, the police people, and they were coming to me, sir, look at these Nazaz demands of farmers. Nazaz means they are not acceptable demands of farmers. I said, what is the non-acceptable demand of farmers? He said, they are asking for a pension of 10,000 rupees. I said, so where is the money? I said, the same place where you get your 2 lakh rupees pension. You don't want to talk about your pension. 2 lakh rupees, nobody wants to talk about it. But 10,000 rupees किसान ने मांग लिया तो सारा देश का नुकसान हो गया है. This is because this is how we have cast a design, and we are very happy. Proceeding in that design, हम हर बार बोलते रहेंगे कि किसान जो है वो उसको ये नहीं मिलना चाहिए, उसको MSP को कानूनी अधिकार नहीं होना चाहिए. All those things we will talk about. Because why the entire burden would have to be borne by the rest of the society. But just think of it. What a burden, a national burden that the entire country is living with when we try to give a higher salaries to the employees. And don't think Indian employees compared to the global design or the global if I look at the national or international an average that it gets, you will be surprised. The World Bank tells us that Indian employees are the highest paid in the world comparatively. They get 8 times more than the international average. And yet we say, oh no, इनका तो salary और बढ़ना चाहिए. Go on doing it. I have no problems, as I said earlier. But there has to be rationalization someplace and sometime. I am not against the employees को क्यों मिल रहा है, but I am obviously perturbed when I see कि farmers only get 27 rupees a day, and nobody is worried about it. इसीलिए कभी when I wrote about it, I said this is one of the topics which the nation had never had an anger on this particular issue. I get a feedback which says, आप इनकी क्यों बात करते हो? Who are pampered, that's the word. They are the people who are pampered. So 100 रुपए भी होता है, कभी 2 रुपए भी होता है, and eventually it is the farmer who ends up with lots of money, and that's imagination. There is also an imagination कि भाई किसान जो है जब protest करता है तो उसके ट्रैक्टर जो हैं उस पे 2-2 लाख रुपए के म्यूजिक सिस्टम लगे हुए हैं. So he is so rich, and that is what is visible from the way the tractors move and so on and so forth. So ये मुझे लिखा जा रहा है, and the belief is कि farmers every other day some government is coming out with scheme A, somebody is coming with scheme B, and farmers are getting all these kinds of benefit for no reason. That's what they say. But when I look at the OECD report, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is the world's richest trading bloc, OECD report, the report says very clearly, between 2000 and 2024, Indian farmers are the only community of farmers globally who have been cultivating losses year after year. This is OECD report. Please don't blame me. If you want to see the OECD report, just take out the document, go to the site, find out. OECD report tells us that between the year 2000 and 2016, 16-year period, the OECD started evaluating the producer support farmers are given in major economies. So they looked into 54 major economies. And India is among the 3 countries which are in the negative zone. And the other two countries are Vietnam and Argentina. And the report tells us very clearly that the countries like Vietnam and Argentina are actually covering up the farmers' losses by way of budgetary support. Indian farmers are the only doses. Going to be 45,000 in a year now. I have nothing against the poor chaprasi, but all I am telling you is please try to understand how this entire structure has been laid out and what can we all do in the context. Don't dissociate or don't de-link these two aspects and then say कि नहीं agriculture में तो ये technology आएगी, ये scheme आएगी, and so we are going to solve the crisis. No, it is not so. Unless you look at the C of the farmers. Having said this, I think it is also very important to understand that the entire design, if you follow very clearly, it is designed to keep the agriculture or the farmers impoverished. Whether you are in America, whether you are in UK, whether you are in India, farmers. In America, we have hardly 1.5% farmers left. Now we have a one-man WTO, Trump, and Trump will now throw up all those things into disarray in the days to come. But nevertheless, let's try to understand. A lot of people are asking me today, and in fact, the senior bureaucrats of India, remarkable breed, they are saying India should set its house in order. Nobody has the courage to say that America needs to put its house in order. Let me give you one example of cotton. Cotton is a crop which is grown quite, I would say, in an area in Andhra and Telangana. And we normally think cotton farmer, they are backward, substandard, inefficient. But the reality is they are not backward, they are neither substandard. They are being killed because one country is subsidizing cotton to an extent that we can't even imagine. Cotton in America, only 8,000 farmers. 8,000 farmers, cotton growers in America. In India, we have 98 lakh cotton growers. Just to give you a comparison, 8,000 kisan, 98 lakh kisan, India. The land holdings in India, as you all know, we have been saying since morning, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acres. In America, it is 400 hectares on average. On top of it, American farmers get a subsidy support of $1 lakh plus every year. $1 lakh plus. Indian farmers को subsidy support मिलती है $27. So compare $1 lakh with $27. And that is why our ex-finance minister, Kamal Nath, had said it at a number of places that I am willing to compete with America or American cotton growers. But I am not willing to compete with American treasury. Because with the Americans subsidizing their agriculture, they need to set their house in order because there is a fortress built around their agriculture. You cannot penetrate that fortress. And then our Indians are telling us कि आप अपना घर ठीक करिए. घर तो तभी ठीक हो जाएगा when we say कि bureaucrats की सैलरी जो है वो भी उसी तरीके से दुनिया में अगर उनको 8 टाइम हाई मिलती है सैलरी तो उसको भी रैशनलाइज करिए सब कुछ बैठ जाएगा तब. लेकिन नाउ दे नो दे आर द पैम्पर्ड लॉट, दे आर द बॉसेस. अगर हम एमएसपी हम देते हैं व्हीट एंड पैडी पे और एमएसपी जब आप व्हीट एंड पैडी पे देते हो तो जो प्रोक्योरमेंट आप करते हो इट इज काउंटेड एज सब्सिडी. आई डोंट नो व्हाई द गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉइज की सैलरी सब्सिडी क्यों नहीं गिनी जाती. लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई इज इट कि फार्मर से हम खरीदते हैं तो वो तो सब्सिडी है, लेकिन जब एम्प्लॉइज को तनख्वाह देते हैं दोनों में सरकारें दे रही हैं. एम्प्लॉइज की तनख्वाह भी सरकार देती है और यहाँ भी अगर आप प्राइवेट कंपनी खरीदते हैं तो देन इट इज नॉट कंसिडर्ड एज अ सब्सिडी. बट यहाँ पर भी लेट अस यूज द सेम प्रिंसिपल. आप गवर्नमेंट की एम्प्लॉइज जो तनख्वाह मिलती है उसको सब्सिडी गिनिए एंड देन लेट्स गो टू WTO एंड सी व्हाट हैपेंस. द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज हम लोग बड़े होशियार हैं. वी हैव कवर्ड आवर ओन टर्फ. वी डोंट वांट एनीबॉडी टू एंटर इनटू दैट. वी आर लाइक ट्रम्प. ट्रम्प ने अपने एग्रीकल्चर को तो प्रोटेक्ट किया हुआ है, बाकी दुनिया का सारा एग्रीकल्चर गलत है उसके हिसाब से. हमारे भी देश में एम्प्लॉइज की सैलरी प्रोटेक्टेड है, बाकी सब गलत है. Sorry for saying this, but we need to understand, where will we start standing up and questioning that system? We don't. Then in Punjab, if you come, paddy is a very big problem in Punjab. You all know that stubble burning bhi hoti hai, paddy ka water table has gone down and so on. So we blame farmers for that. Actually, Punjab mein to paddy hota hi nahi tha. Punjab was never growing paddy. It was the agriculture scientists who forced Punjab farmers to go in for paddy. Do they take responsibility now? Not at all. सारा blame farmer पे. तुम जलाते भी हो, तुमने पानी का भी बेड़ा गर्क कर दिया, and so on and so forth, we will say. So put all the blame on farmers, and then we say that because he is getting free electricity, so therefore the karza of Punjab has gone up. But do we know that Punjab government employees, get 40% higher salary than rest of the country? I don't even know whether we are into 7th pay commission there or not. 40% higher salary. कभी नहीं किसी ने कहा कि पंजाब का कर्जा बढ़ गया because of employees. It is always the poor farmers who can be hounded out on this part के लिए किसान है जो नुकसान कर रहा है देश का. मेरा सबमिशन आपको ये बताने का यही था कि let us try to go in for a rethinking. When I say go in for a rethink, you should also have the capacity to stand up and ask a question. आज हमारा official system सारे देश में ऐसा है, कोई scientist, कोई economist, कोई पत्रकार सवाल पूछने को तैयार नहीं है. We are in that kind of a system. And then we have only sermons for the farmers. को आपको ऐसे करना चाहिए, आपको ऐसे करना चाहिए. Everybody, ये सुभाष शर्मा जी बताएंगे, हमें सब आते हैं, आपको सलाह दे जाते हैं कि खेती करनी ऐसी होती है, खेती ऐसे करनी होती है, and so on and so forth. मेरा सजेशन आप सबके साथ यही है कि अगर हम एग्रोइकोलॉजी में ट्रांजिशन कर रहे हैं, पहली बात तो मुझे आज तक नहीं समझ आई किसको मैं ब्लेम करूं कि हम जब अपना खाद्यान्न पैदा करते हैं देश में तो हम उसको लिटरली केमिकल्स में डिबो के करते हैं. Whether we are spraying pesticides on crops and the kind of pesticides and the quantity of pesticides, तो हम लिटरली उसको डुबोते हैं पेस्टिसाइड्स में. मैं अभी पीछे कर्नाटका गया तो एक फैमिली ने मुझे इनवाइट किया डिनर पे और उन्होंने बड़े प्राउडली कहा, सर आज आप आए हैं तो आज हम पंजाब की वीट आपको खिलाएंगे. मैंने कहा भैया पंजाब की वीट है तो छोड़ दो, क्योंकि हम जानते हैं पंजाब में हम कितना उसमें केमिकल्स डालते हैं, पेस्टिसाइड्स डालते हैं. आप मुझे यहीं के खिला दो, आई विल बी हैप्पी विद दैट रादर देन गिविंग मी पंजाब वीट. द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज हम लिटरली अपने क्रॉप्स को उसमें डिप करते हैं. एंड देन लुक एट दिस टेक्नोलॉजी. ये साइंटिस्टों को भी जवाब देना चाहिए कभी, क्योंकि हमने पूछा नहीं कभी उनसे. अब जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड क्रॉप्स हैं, पहले तो आप केमिकल्स ऊपर से स्प्रे करते थे, अब तो आप अंदर से भी करते हैं. जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड क्रॉप्स अंदर टॉक्सिन पैदा करता है, क्रॉप के अंदर भी टॉक्सिन, बाहर भी टॉक्सिन. एंड देन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट न्यूट्रिशन, हेल्थ एंड ऑल फूड सेफ्टी एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. आई डोंट नो, हम ही लोग हैं जो उसमें वी आर वेरी हैप्पी व्हेन वी गेट द पीडीएस ग्रेन इन आवर बैग. बट द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक, क्यों नहीं हम इस सिस्टम को ठीक कर सकते हैं कि आप देख रहे हैं, आपको दिख भी रहा है, यू कैन सी दैट दिस इज a corrupted kind of a system. That's what they say. Food is in India, if you look at it, or even globally, food is broken. The food system is broken. We all know that. But where are we making an effort to correct it? But don't worry. जो काम आप नहीं कर सके, and give me 2 or 3 minutes more, जो काम आप नहीं कर सकते वो कंपनियां कर देंगी आपके लिए. Because we are now moving from food security to protein security. Food security is going to disappear from this common parlance in a couple of years from now. It is going to be protein security. Protein security because the companies now realize where the money is. They are also in transition. So उस transition में they now realize where the money is, and the money will be in protein. If you look at globally today, we should know that now there is a push. जो किसान खेती में रह गए हैं उनको भी बाहर निकालने का push है. In Holland, which is the second biggest exporter of agriculture, they have 11,000 farms. 11,000 उनके पास खेत हैं, जिसमें से 3,000 farmers have been asked to get out. They have been asked to get out in the name of climate change. So climate change में these 3,000 farmers have been asked to move out. And look at Europe, they have also ensured that these farmers cannot get land anywhere in Europe and start refarming. उसको भी बाहर कर दिया. England is the another country where 5,000 farmers are getting a notice to be out of agriculture. England, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Lindsay, has less than 1% population now in agriculture. And even those farmers are being pushed out. I'm not talking about the inheritance tax, but other parts also. And this is not only confined to England or Holland. Look at New Zealand. New Zealand, as you know, is a country of cows, but because we are being told cows methane nikalta hai, so there is a tax on cows now. Nobody taxes the companies. I have never seen a company or the big corporates being taxed. They are the ones who are actually responsible for global warming, but nobody is taxing them. Poor cow is now being held responsible for the climate change problem ho raha hai duniya ka. So it's not only even New Zealand, Austria and other countries are also in the same route. And I'm sure one day our government will also start, because we are a great country. We have policymakers who are very good at cut and paste. So whatever they say in America, whatever they say in England, and that includes the scientific community also. Cut and paste kiya, yahan chipka diya. This is a reform for the country, and we are very happy the new kinds of reforms that are coming in this country. So mera submission hai India mein bhi shuru ho jayega when we have to push farmers out. And now when the question that crops up is no farmer, no food was a big slogan. So they are saying ki agar no farmer, no food, to fir ye kahan se food aayega? Ladies and gentlemen, the world's first food factory which has started operating is in Finland. Last year it started operating. It produces 500 million meals a year without involving farmers or without using land. And that's in a one building. So they use some minerals from the air, and they cross with bacteria and so on, and are producing food for you. And I was looking at the interview of that CEO. You know what he said? He said, we are not manufacturing food. We are in the process of manufacturing land. क्योंकि मैंने तो एक building नहीं बना दिया सब कुछ. I don't need land, so I am producing land, he says. Very right he is. And he says, this is what the world requires. We need to save biodiversity and blah, blah, blah. So, Jameen to sabse important hai. So, and if you are thinking that Finland is the only country which is still far away, let me tell you, there are 270 companies operating globally. They are producing synthetic food, what you call. And that is protein based. So, how they are saying protein? Because today the biggest cultivation that is taking place anywhere in the world is actually of insects. Billions of insects are being produced or reared in these factories, which is one building factory. And what they do is now they take out protein out of the insect. So protein say, then they try to do all these arithmetic, a logarithm, sorry for not remembering the word earlier. A logarithm say, aapko ab wo protein jo hai usse, they will make the food and then come up with that thing to be marketed, and then eventually you will have one film actress in India saying, wow, lovely food, and the nation will start eating that food. So we have this, it's very well laid out. So we are moving in that direction where protein, and look at in Holland, there is a very so कहते हैं ना कि बड़ा शरीफ सा एक animal है, sea animal, octopussy. I'm sure you have seen James Bond ki octopussy, but this is octopussy, doesn't disturb anybody. Now Holland is going into farming octopussy because that is from where they will be extracting protein. And the revolution that we are heading towards now, we are still stuck up. We are a great nation. अभी हम उसमें ही जी रहे हैं. Green revolution, green revolution, green revolution. Go to any university, they go on patting themselves for a green revolution. But now we are entering what is called as agriculture revolution 4.0. Agriculture 4.0 revolution, we are right there at the door. It means you will have tractors which don't have drivers. You will have tractors operating on robots. Robots will not only be doing farming in the field, and don't think it is only something which is for the rich countries. Even a country like Thailand is pumping a lot of government money to see how robots can take care of agriculture. So isko dekhte jaiye aap and look at the kinds of mechanization that is coming up. Everything is getting concentrated in the hands of the neo-rich and the conglomerates and so on, which will decide the government's agenda. There are 68 more billionaires, food billionaires in this world, according to Oxfam's report, recent report. So that tells us, it's all getting concentrated in the hands of just 68 people across the globe who are going to decide what are you going to eat, when do you eat, all those things they will lay out for you. So आपको डरने की जरूरत नहीं है. जो आपने काम कर सके वो आपके लिए कर देंगे आने वाले दिनों में. Now, still there has to be some when we walk out of this hall, or those who are listening to us otherwise, I think we should be very clear that we did not say anything when the green revolution was being imposed on us. We welcome, चाहे आपने हमें केमिकल से डाउज किया है, चाहे आपने फर्टिलाइजर वो सब कुछ किया है, we accepted it. But now the stage is coming again when we are moving into the transition, and everyone is telling us that agroecology is the way forward and so on and so forth, which most of us would tend to agree. But take a call. Take a call. Do you really want safe and healthy food? Or you are happy जो आपको प्रोटीन का rich food मिलेगा आने वाले दिनों में? It is your call. Let's say 5 years later, if I ever get a chance to come back to CSA for a conference, and at that time, again, if we are talking about healthy food and hollow foods and so on, that we are all worried about today, then I think it is nobody else's fault, it is your fault. When I say it is your fault, क्योंकि आप नहीं बोले, and I think you deserve it. You means you and me. We deserve it. अगर हम नहीं बोल सकते, we don't want healthy food for ourselves, then please let's go to hell. I don't care. But if you really want a good food, then I think it is our responsibility to ensure that the next revolution, green revolution जो आएगा, it will be not be driven by the companies, but it should be driven by the consumers. Consumers have a responsibility now. आज तक आपने कुछ नहीं किया. You are only eating जो benefit of किसानों ने आपको दिया है. At least for once, at least stand up and say that this is the kind of food I
Could you
eat.
please conclude?
So my submission is that when we walk out of this, please carry this message forward that the next revolution is going to be by consumers. And if consumers fail, let us continue with this kind of a dialogue for all times to come. But if the consumers succeed, we will be able to stall that protein revolution that they are going to face, or the agriculture revolution 4.0. I think it is a collective responsibility. So all of us, please, let's be sure that instead of accusing government A, government B, or policymakers, or economists, and so on and so forth, take it on you. Take it on you. If you can't get good quality food on our tables, it is your fault. And please accept it कि हाँ मेरी गलती हुई थी, हम ये नहीं कर पाए. But next time, let's not bear with me. And I must also tell you before I go, just another acknowledgement. Sometimes back I was traveling in, and I was giving a talk between Edinburgh and Glasgow. At that time, one lady who was there listening to me got up and said, I agree with you, Mr. Sharma, but we have a bulldozer plan. We have a bulldozer operating, and I don't know where should I get the inspiration to stall that bulldozer. I guess she must have thought I'm coming from India, and so I would talk about Mahatma Gandhi and so on. But I must have disappointed her. I said, you don't have to look at inspiration from across the subcontinents. You have to look at inspiration right in your backyard. Try to be a little more careful. I told her that one of the pilgrimage I always ought to do whenever it is possible is when if I am in UK part, I go to Edinburgh. I'm so happy you have come from Edinburgh to Hyderabad. So when I'm there, I go to Edinburgh. And the stories should be clear. If you go to the Edinburgh Castle, at the gate of the castle, there are two statues, left side, right side. One of these statues is of Robert Bruce. And I always go to pay my pilgrimage or be there to get inspired. Robert Bruce was the gentleman, we have all read the stories when we were a kid, the man who fought 5 times in the war, and then he lost it 5th time. He went into a cave and was thinking that he should give it up now. And then he saw a spider falling 27 times and still getting up and completing the web. And that is where he got the inspiration, and he went back and won. I think that's the kind of pilgrimage, which means that we must continue, never give up, continue. I think thanks to Robert Bruce, and I'm sure that kind of vibration that comes from you, Lindsay, is something that I hope people also carry, that we should not give up. Don't give up, don't feel कि नहीं हम तो helpless हैं. You are not helpless, you have everything in you. The only thing is you need to assert yourself and try to build up a narrative that the country requires. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mandy.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sorry for cutting your time very short. And it is very lovely to hear so many experiences from you from all the different countries. Hope we'll have another good time with you. Maybe we can have solely a session with you only. So now we are moving to the engaging panel discussion. To moderate this session, we have with us Mr. Kurmana. He is the Senior Deputy Editor at Hindu Business Line. With over 30 years of journalism experience, he has covered critical issues in agriculture, commodities and policies. So I welcome you, Kurmana sir, and stage is yours. I request you to have a discussion around 15 to 20 minutes to make it very short. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Lindsay, it must be overwhelming for you listening all these things about Indian agriculture.
No, not at all.
Actually, we have been listening on these things for the last, say, 3 decades. It is overwhelming for us too, even today. So, despite listening to them, writing on them, studying them, it's really overwhelming. See, India is not just one monolithic India, like societies in UK or US. We are 100 years apart, living in the same moment. Second, people are living 100 years ahead, and some people are living 100 years behind. So the challenge of nutrition that you are looking at is an interesting element. An outsider only can bring out certain things. The pilot is a question on the pilot that you are doing. What will be the scalability of the study after the pilot is done?
So we're currently doing that study at the scale of 2,000 households in AP.
That is the pilot.
The pilot was just 20 households, but now we're up to 2,000 for the larger study. I think it is scalable widely. I mean, I think if you can demonstrate that transitioning to natural farming reduces pesticide exposure in such an objective way, taking people's urine samples and measuring the biomarkers. And there'll be some variability, but I imagine that anywhere where the cropping system is largely similar in terms of the pesticides used, results will be similar.
So you are doing a comparative study of people who are exposed to chemicals and those who are following natural farming.
Yeah, so we're doing a large randomized control trial actually, where 80 villages were randomized, half to receive the APCNF training from ICRPs, and half which just continued with chemical farming.
How long will it take to complete the study?
So we've just finished the third fall. So we've done baseline and 2 follow-up visits. So 3 visits so far. We're going to follow them for another 3 years. So we're hoping to follow over the long term. As I said, we're measuring things like child development. So the kids were under 3 when they were enrolled, but now they're about 5 years or so. But we want to continue while they're in school. So hopefully we'll continue to follow them for many years. Because of course the transition from chemical to natural farming takes time. It doesn't happen within 1 season.
Yeah, thank you. Subhash ji, that was a nice presentation. I can't speak in Hindi. I can understand fully, but my Hindi is very broken Hindi. So I'll be asking my question in English. We have read about your experiment in the region, how actually you can make a difference. So my question is, your presentation is elaborate and questions also, some of the audience have actually stolen my questions. So one question for you is, when fellow farmers see this model, your example, what is their response? Why they are not able to emulate your model? What are the suspicion, what are the questions that they have in their mind?
जहाँ तक मैं मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगा।
Yeah, please do.
जहाँ तक मैं आपके क्वेश्चन को समझ रहा हूँ, तो देखिए इस तरह की खेती को अगर तेजी से रिप्लिकेट करना है, तो उसके हर प्रोडक्शन की कीमत देने की तैयारी समाज की या सरकार की होनी चाहिए। तो हम इस चीज को बहुत तेजी से मैंने कहा कि जैसे मिट्टी का हम प्रोडक्शन कर रहे हैं तो समाज की जवाबदेही बन जाती कि उसका उपभोग समाज ले रहा है, तो उसका प्रोडक्शन का मूल्य उसको समाज में चुकाने की तैयारी रखना चाहिए। अब सरकार के भरोसे काम नहीं होगा क्योंकि सरकार तो नहीं कर रही है कुछ किसानों को, तो सारा समाज की तरफ से उठनी चाहिए ये बात। फिर हम बोल रहे हैं कि नेचुरल फार्मिंग के थ्रू हम पानी इतना पैदा कर देंगे, मीठा पानी, स्वस्थ पानी, अच्छा पानी, लेकिन वो प्रोडक्शन के पीछे मूल्य चुकाने की तैयारी समाज की रखेगी तो हर किसान और ये नेचुरल फार्मिंग एक ही साल में तेजी बढ़ जाएगी इसमें और सब स्वीकारने लग जाएंगे। हम बोल रहे हैं कि भाई आपको अच्छी सांस मिलनी चाहिए इसलिए हम 30% पेड़ लगा देंगे खेतों में, लेकिन उसका प्रोडक्शन का मूल्य चुकाने की तैयारी समाज के रखनी चाहिए। तो इन ऑर्डर फाइनल समरी ये बनती है कि कोई भी, मैं एक ये मेरा मोबाइल है, मुझे कंपनी ने फ्री में नहीं दिया, कंपनी ने अपना मुनाफा जोड़ के दिया, तो आप मुझसे अगर कहोगे कि मिट्टी को उसका मूल्य चुकाने की समाज की जिस दिन तैयारी हो जाएगी उस दिन बहुत तेजी से ये व्यवस्था आगे बढ़ेगी। जब तक इसमें मुझे नहीं लगता कि बहुत इसमें तेजी आएगी, फिर हम कितने ही प्रयास कर ले। अभी मुझे कहा गया कि आपने बोलकर कि कितने किसानों को तैयार कर ले, अरे आप उसके किसी चीज का प्रोडक्शन का मूल्य नहीं दे रहे, उसका अट्रैक्शन नहीं हो पा रहा है इसके नेचुरल फार्मिंग की तरफ।
Sir, sir, government has recognized your contribution. You received the highest award in the country. But in terms of replicating the idea, government is not doing enough. What actually the government should do to replicate your model in other parts of the country? At least in the dryland areas of like Vidarbha, we have entire Telangana is dryland. So what should government do to promote these kind of models?
एक तो इसको कंपलसरी कर देना चाहिए कि नेचुरल फार्मिंग ये कंपलसरी है और ये प्रोडक्शन का मूल्य हम तभी देंगे जब ये कंपलसरी होगा। अगर इसका प्रोडक्शन मूल्य देके इसको कंपलसरी कर दिया तो फिर बहुत तेजी से गवर्नमेंट का भी सुनने लगेंगे सरकार की बात, लेकिन उसके श्रम का अगर मूल्य नहीं चुकाता जब तक उसके समझ पाएंगे लोग।
Devendra, I have been reading, I have been listening to you for the last 25 years or even more. The fire has not come down a bit. Actually, it is still, it's gaining more steam. See, we have successful models across the country. You have been visiting the country, even world also. In India, there are successful models. That Mr. Subhash has done that, Ramo has done that, DDS has done that, RYSS, I know there are several examples. You have been following the policy making for so long. What is restraining the government, our government, state governments, which is holding agriculture in their portfolio? What is holding them for them to replicate these models?
They don't want to. They are not willing to go for out of the box thinking. The system that they have laid out or they have been born with or educated themselves and so on, they can't move beyond that. I have always said that the biggest change would come about only if, let's say, we have an agriculture minister in center and we have the chief minister in just for the sake of considering the kind of a design. Let's say we have the chief minister in Telangana. Unless he changes the his set of advisors, I don't think this country can change. The problems are the set of advisors. Whether it is Delhi or whether it is Punjab or whether Haryana, उनकी हिंदी में if I say, उनकी औकात ही नहीं है. They don't even have that capacity to think on that particular track. It would require a lot of effort from the civil society to really stand up and call for a change in thinking, change in narratives and so on and so forth, which I think will happen eventually when we try to build up on these kinds of things that we are discussing today, for instance. And otherwise, please, if you are thinking of those Johnnies going to serve you better, please give up. Please give up. Don't be kind enough to them. Yeah. And the problem is most of us are kind to them. We don't even stand up and question them. तो क्या होगा? Why do we blame कि वो policymakers क्यों नहीं बदल रहे? आप ही नहीं बदल रहे. you know. So you are not willing to even stand up and ask your own professor in the college, you know. So professor ko nahi sawal puchte, professor aage nahi sawal puchta. That system goes on. I think somebody will have to take a, जैसे होता है ना वो शीशा, so there's a kind of a thing that says in emergency knock at door and उसको तोड़ के उसको use करो extinguisher पे जो भी है. So we need that kind of a thing, but it is not happening. I have my doubts कि this society at this present juncture would go for that change. You know, ठीक है, Ramuji is doing great job, RYSS is doing a great job. Oh, we will go on complimenting them. We will go on complimenting Subhash Sharma जो उन्होंने काम किया. But that, what should I say, that willingness to take it forward, that is not there.
See, the dichotomy in thinking of officers you related while you are talking about, I can vouch for it actually. See, apart from agriculture, IT and startups are also my fields. So I cover, since it is a small city when compared to bigger cities, I cover IT, startups and agriculture. There are some other things also. But when I cover IT, it is so glamorous. Startups, is a very sexy thing. Every quarter, companies, they come out with results. They say companies come out with 8% growth, 7% growth. They are so sad. The entire society is so sad that it is not achieving the double-digit growth that it was doing some 10 years ago. Even the government is also so sad. There are lives involved. I'm not denying that. They have a reason to why, but they have an association, NASCOM. They are so powerful that they can just, the secretaries, the ministers are just a call away. But I don't see, all of IT is about 40-60 lakhs of employees and some companies, handful of companies. In the last 10 years, startups, there are 100 startups that have become what you call unicorns, billion-dollar valuation and more. And I don't see similar stories. In fact, farmers are driven more into that kind of thing. They don't have a kind of asking with the government. No one can talk to agriculture minister, who is generally the most weakest one in the cabinet, who doesn't have any power or so. I can vouch for that disparities that is happening. Ramu.
You know, that is why we see after the government employees retire, senior bureaucrats retire, तब उनको समझ आ जाती है. Then they are equal. For me also in my committee, there are so many requests coming from retired vice chancellor कि सब आप हम free हैं, आप हमें बताइए. अरे यार, thank God आप free हो गए. All I tell them कि आप free हो गए, कम से कम अभी वो तो continue नहीं करोगे ना. So I think it is quite evident. Retirement के बाद सबको अकल आ जाती है. उससे पहले कहीं ना कोई problem तो है ही है.
White hair brings wisdom. Say again? White hair brings wisdom.
Yeah.
And no hair.
Yeah, if you're in Punjab.
Ramu, see, you have been seeing the whole ecosystem at a different perspective. You are a scientist, you are an administrator. I mean, what to be administrator? You started an organization or several organizations. You worked with the governments, you worked with the farmers and FPOs. So you have developed a model. You hit road bumps, you succeeded it several times, you faced some kind of issues. What are the 2-3 challenges you faced in building a Sahaja Haram or in an FPO, and how actually government can do or the system can do to help FPOs? Those things should not be there actually, but they are there. What are those 3-4 challenges you faced?
One major challenge is the access to credit. Access to credit and then support. Say, a couple of examples I present. I went to manage to present as part of the startups ecosystem. I and Ravi were there. We both went and presented. We are a startup, so give us fund. They said, you are a farmers cooperative. They said, see, farmers are going and they are doing organic farming. They have a certification. They are selling directly to agriculture. It's an incentive. This is a innovation. They said, this is not innovation. Manage saying that. And then, do you have an act? These are questions they asked. Then, after 1 year or so, we went with an app also. They still said, you are a cooperative. And clearly they said cooperatives are not eligible.
Okay.
Right? So in our mind, we feel private enterprises will bring some revolution in this country, but farmers are the biggest entrepreneurs in this country.
Innovators,
entrepreneurs, they're doing the private business, right? But you are trying to kill it. So that's one issue. So access to credit. FPO, for example, say Sahaja, see, all our cooperatives put together, I can become 100 crore business in the next 6 months. But we don't have access to credit. We have the largest volume of organic food which we are producing. And for me to hold it, if I have to pay 12 to 16% tax, and then on every packet 5% GST, it becomes expensive. I am unable to cater to the middle market. So I have to go to the very high premium market. If I go to the high premium market, then I need larger capital because I also have to get Kamala Hassan or Amitabh Bachchan to tell them to eat organic. I have to sell it in a supermarket. So I was actually making a calculation which say if organic food is say 50% higher priced, 75% of the money actually goes to the advertisements. You are paying for Kamala Hassan, you are paying for Amitabh Bachchan, you are not paying to farmer here. That is the situation. So there are issues there. So access to credit is a big issue. We don't get. See, if I get access to affordable credit, simply it can be scaled up. Is one issue. Of course, there are challenges with infrastructure and everything, but that's one big thing. Second, taxation system is so bad. See, farmers are the only one who buys everything in retail, sells in wholesale. There's no manufacturing system or production system like that anywhere in the world. So you are all taxed for your inputs, and in the output side you can't do anything. Say there's a GST on fertilizer, there's a GST on inputs, machinery, everything, but farmer cannot claim the reimbursement for every damn person in this world.
The whole system is towards output based.
And if every system is output based, then agriculture is also output, right? Why are we not actually looking at it? So that's the issue. So there is a lot of anomalies in the system. Second important issue is there's a lot of violations of law. Just to give you an example, last week we were in one district in Telangana. When we went, there were some deaths happened. So the issue triggered us because there was some death because of a seed crop failure. We went there and we inquired. There was a 60% interest charged to the farmers.
Access to credit problem.
Access to credit, 60%. Right, 60%. And it's a private money lender. There's a Money Lenders Act in this state. No one knows that they should be implemented. It's a contract farming, not registered. Agriculture officer, marketing department is supposed to register, they didn't do. When they asked, they said it doesn't come under legal system. When we showed them, they said, I don't know. Right? It's the second one. Then there were sold pesticides without bill. Agriculture officer says, I don't know. It is not in the shop, so I can't regulate. Agriculture officer was supposed to be regulating that, right? It is not in the shop. There is only 2% of the people who come from the tribal areas who are working there. Violation of PESA Act. That the guy who is actually controlling it owns about 100 acres of land. Again, one of 70 violation. We listed out nearly 15 laws violated. No one worries about it. See, this is the kind of situation in which we are.
See, if they are taking loans at 60%, what should be
when will it become viable?
It is lost already. When they are starting the venture, it is lost already. So they have to make profits at 80% to repay loans at 60%.
And the farmer is paid 36 rupees per kg seed. It is sold at 800 rupees. The maize, hybrid maize seed which they are producing, farmer is paid 36 rupees. After doing all this, 60% interest and all those things, they paid 36 rupees. And then it is sold in the market at 800 rupees a kg. That's the situation. So the whole issue is the system is like that. And I can give you another example. So we run a helpline called Kisan Mitra. We get a lot of calls from farmers. A farmer has to deal with nearly 30-40 people in a year to solve their problems. And in the 2040, nearly 20-25 are the departments, which all failed. Now we are expecting an FPO to correct all the problems. See, all of us failed. So let an FPO solve all the problems, increase the credit, sell in the market, solve the crop production problem, solve the soil problem, solve the...
For the poor bandwidth they have. They don't have any support in the bandwidth.
And without any support.
Yeah.
So that is the issue. So we are expecting some CEO to run a cooperative and then give them 2 crore business, and then he's paid 50,000 rupees. If he's capable of doing it, why will he run that? So I'm saying it's all anomaly systems, and then we are expecting to find solutions in that.
I think I will stop here, because as a trained reporter, each panelist I can ask easily 6 to 7 questions for my, to do my story. But I'm just stopping it with 1 question each. We have an exhaustive view of the present challenges in agriculture. Some of you know some of the issues. Some of you might know all the issues also. But it is very important for us to discuss these issues as many times as possible. Lindsay is saying that there is a little scope for education, but I believe that we need to discuss these things as many times at as many fora as possible, so that the word is spread, and so that we are hooked to the challenges. So that when we go outside, the roads are empty tonight. Roads will be empty because IPL matches are happening. For the next 40 days in India, you go anywhere from 6:30 to 8:30, roads are empty. See, there is madness going ahead. That madness is covering all the real challenges. So small groups of people like us, we need to discuss these things again and again, to spread the word and rededicate ourselves for the challenges that we are facing. Thank you. Thank you, all the panelists.
Thank you so much, Kurbanal garu, as finishing in a well manner and timely. And thanks for asking the right questions. And also I thank all the panelists for answering it very crisp and clearly. Now I request Ramu sir to present the mementos for all the panelists as a token of gratitude. Lindsay.
Ramu, can you please come?
Sharma garu. Kurbanal garu. Thank you everyone. As we are about to conclude today's seminar, I invite our teacher to propose a vote of thanks. And so after concluding, please, we will have a group photograph. Please assemble here all the attendants. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. So we've come to the close of today's seminar on pathways towards agroecological transition in India. I want to thank all of you for giving your precious time and joining us in person today and keeping up the engagement through your questions and comments. I hope the conversation that we've had, they've shed some light on the interconnected reasons for the agrarian crisis we face, as well as the potential that agroecology holds to transform this. Starts now, so we're hoping that the takeaways from this seminar, you all take them forward in your respective professions and your pursuits, and we as well through our projects and our other ongoing work. we'll make sure to take this forward. And there's a role for everyone in this transformation, whether it's farmers, researchers, consumers, practitioners, or policymakers. So once again, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for your very insightful presentations, which have given us a lot of food for thought. And I'd also like to thank some of our esteemed guests who could make it to join us in person today. And I'll invite Divya to give them a token of our appreciation. So we have with us today Ramanjaneyulu, who's a farmer leader, representative for Farmers Organization. We also have with us Professor E. who is the director of CESS. Thank you so much for giving us this amazing venue. From Hyderabad University. Okay. We also have with us Dr. Rukmini Rao from Gramya, who is also on the board of CSA. We have with us Dr. Sharma, the President of the Plant Protection Association of India. And we have with us Dr. Narasimha Reddy Garu, who is from PAN India. And finally, we have with us Tulsi Tewari, an economist and independent researcher. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we hope you have a great evening. Please come to the stage for a group photo.
లైవ్
ఇదా కనబడతాను నేను